6 o'clock, I'm calling to order this regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Bandera. All council members are present. Our City Attorney Dan Santee is present. Marshall Will is present. City Secretary Jill Shelton is present. Item 2 is visitors to be heard. I believe there were 2 emails, Rebecca, sent in.
Okay, yes, and what I wonder about these, because they are in regards to agenda items, is it appropriate that we call them in, at the time of the agenda item?
No.
No? Read them now? Okay, so there's an email that I'll read, and the others will be, I believe, oh, present. Okay. Or maybe one's on the Zoom call. Dear council members, I write this on behalf of Jill Shelton and her character, whom I have known for 20 plus years. I met Jill when she was managing a successful business. She oversaw the day-to-day business operations and managed office staff. She wasn't just well-liked, she was loved by her employees and bosses as well. Jill was one of the lead founders and organizers of a benefit that raised money every year in October for breast cancer awareness, which benefited the First Friday organization. This organization made free mammograms available to women who could not afford them. She is always the first person to ask what she can do to help. I've always known her to be the person to rally others to pitch in and help where there is need. She and her husband recently went through the long process of adopting their grandson Leaf. Taking on that responsibility of caring for a 6-year-old when most of us over 50 are looking forward to retirement is something I'm sure many of us would not want to take on. Her love and devotion to family, friends, and co-workers is immeasurable. I have the utmost respect for Jill and her position as city secretary. Jill is an organizer, a planner, and a problem solver. It would be a detriment to the city of Bandera and the citizens to tender her employment. Respectfully, Crystal Dobbs, a concerned citizen and taxpayer for the city of Bandera. And there is a request for Stella to be unmuted from the Zoom call. Is that correct?
She can't be here. She's in hospice right now.
And then, okay, so James, I have your request to speak on Jill's behalf and as well as the mayor. So,
I'll speak. All right, I'm James McGurry, 307 11th Street. Jill Shelton and I have been friends for right now about 16 years with her husband Curtis. While he was a man in blue, a police officer in Corpus Christi, Texas. We've known him through the years. Stella's known him for 45, 50 years. She was from Corpus. The integrity of the family, the integrity of their professionalism in work, and most importantly, that I can see when they moved to Bandera, is that they wanted to come to a community within itself that's quiet, get away from the big city, get away from the beach. Everybody from the beach wants to be here, and then everybody there wants to be here, wants to be there. But she left a really nice, high-paying job. And I asked her one day, I said, what in the heck do you want to come and be in city politics office for? Because it's in a disarray. I've been back 16 years. We've seen lots of council people. We've probably seen 5 or 6 administrations up here. We've had my issues with them. Y'all had issues with me. We've had court cases. We've had non-court cases. We've wasted so much time and money and effort on the infighting within the organization of this administration within this little bitty community. And it's unfortunate because, think about it, if Jill Shelton left tomorrow, it would be probably in her best interest because she doesn't need the headache. But she has the love for this community. And without that love for this community, you're going to lose a major asset to this community that us as business people see on a day-to-day basis. Then you're going to go through the whole process. 5 or 6 people. Oh, he didn't work out. He doesn't have any hair. She doesn't have any hair. I don't like him. She doesn't like me. But it all boils down to forget the personalities, what's in the best interest of our community, and go on with it. And that's what needs to happen. Jill Shelton is your person for this office, period. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
May I interject here?
Please.
James is here because he's a presenter on the agenda, and it just happens that he's here I didn't know he was going to speak. So, thanks, James. Okay, go ahead.
And that's all I have for the visitors to be
Okay.
heard. Sorry, let me just double check.
That's it.
Okay, well, James, you did mention you wanted to speak in regards to the mayor, and then again on your agenda item.
And it's ditto, the same thing, you know, whether Suzanne's just been reelected, the people have spoken. The community has spoken. You have new council people back on. A lot of the other council people were voted off for the same reason. It goes back to the disarray within the council and within the office staff itself. We need to have continuity between everyone. Y'all can't see it, and I'm not saying it in a bad way, but y'all can't see it in the business community because sometimes we scratch our head and say, really? We need to get all on the same page. If y'all are in a disarray up here in Oregon, the people in the city are going, who's representing us in the community? And with Suzanne, she's reelected, doing a good job, you have a whole new term ahead of you. These frivolous lawsuits and these allegations has got to stop. And if it's one individual or 3 individuals or 10 individuals that are doing this, you need to look at what is the end game result here. If you only have 10 months left or 5 months left or 3 months left, why even go through the process of doing this? Because you're not going to accomplish anything. It's not going to accomplish a thing. It's really going to be detrimental to whoever is trying to accomplish this. If they're a business person in this small, close-knit community, that I would think that they would all want to get together and say, okay, you know, like presidential elect, let's get on with it. We're tired of it. It's 2021. Let's get on with it. Let's grow our town. Let's get past COVID. Let's do all this other stuff. And quit fighting inner circle here.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, that's it for visitors
That's
to be
it.
heard. All right, item 3 is the consent agenda. Item A is approval of minutes from December 3rd, 2020 regular meeting and the December 17th regular meeting. Tony?
I would like to pull the December 3rd from the consent agenda. Can we do it?
Okay, we'll move that down and make it item A.
Sorry.
Darcy?
Like, make a motion that we approve the December 17th minutes.
Second?
A second.
Rebecca seconds. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Item 4 is discussion of possible action on the following items. We're going to discuss Tony's request to remove the minutes from the December 3rd, 2020 regular meeting. Tony?
I just, on item 5 on December 3rd, I just would request that each of those, A, B, and C, responded to and answered council's questions. I think that would be better representative of what actually happened, just on the end of each of those.
Okay. Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
On the end of the item 5A, ABC, I would just request that responded to / answered council questions be added to the introduce themselves, explained why they applied at the end of each of the applicants for the council. So I think it would be better representative of what happened that night.
All right, any further discussion? Is that amendment made? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Tony makes a motion to approve. Rebecca seconds. Discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay. Item A, approval of a street closure requested by James Bavorty of 11th Street Cowboy Bar for 11th Street between Cypress and Cedar Streets on Thursday, February 4th, 2021 at 6 p.m. until Sunday, February 7th, 2021 at 3 a.m. for pedestrian and vendor and gumbo cook team safety for the 16th annual 11th Street Cowboy Mardi Gras celebration. Rebecca.
Move to approve.
Rebecca makes a move to approve.
Second.
Darcy seconds. Any discussion?
James is here. Do you have anything to add? I'd like to ask if
Sure,
that's, sorry.
that's what I'm here for. Anything you would need to ask.
Ask your question.
Yeah, oh, okay. Well, first of all, I thought James was here to make a comment, but, so that's what I wanted to give him the opportunity to do. But I know that we are presently under enforcement of GA 32, which has a stipulation that you would need to approve any gathering. Does that apply to this situation, and are you guys working together
We
to
haven't
move
applied
this
it to the
through?
situation because it's an indoor gathering, and he's talking about parking. So parking is a transient situation, and I believe with signage and distancing, James and I have talked about this, and we haven't approved it in the past.
In the wash stations, we're gonna have wash stations, we're gonna have segregation in regards to the location of teams. We've limited our cook teams to 20, so really in reality, that's only 80 people. You know, I'm not worried about the teams, but
I want to clarify that I'm not raising any objection to this event at all. I just know that that piece is in GA 32, and I want to ask to make sure that the planning is moving along and that you have whatever approval that you need, and that that's discussed here in the open meeting, because I'm sure that our public is curious.
sure. And that's why I'm here tonight, because, you know, I haven't said anything because we need approval, or your questions or what your requirements are from me to make sure that we can make sure it happens.
Okay.
And it's basically the first step before going further in the plan, because if council had refused to closing the street, then there would be no reason to go forward with an action plan.
Okay.
So,
That's what you're telling us is the next step is the action
Action
plan
plan.
that you guys will be coordinating on.
And we can tailor it to whatever the needs are.
Thank you.
any further discussion?
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
How about the parade?
Haven't seen a parade application yet.
Can't get a parade application without insurance, but I can't buy insurance until we say it's a go or a no, or it costs $1,500. The parade application is on my desk, but we can't submit the application without the insurance. But if the parade's not approved, no sense in spending money on the insurance.
It's not on your agenda, so I would advise you not to speak to that. If you want to put this on your next agenda to discuss it, you'll need to add it to the next agenda.
Do you want to put it on?
If we need to do a special meeting or something, we might be able to.
When is the next agenda?
2 weeks.
Mardi Gras is in 28 days.
There's one before Mardi Gras.
Well,
The 20,
I know. So it goes back to insurance.
that's cutting it close for planning. That's cutting it close for planning.
Yeah,
It'll be too close to actually get a parade permit.
yes.
Well, and I would, if I may, just state too that that's not something for council approval. Am I correct? So that's something that another piece of Mardi Gras that you and James are going to work out, and I just think that, I mean, I'm happy to request an agenda item for the future if that's necessary, but I'm not seeing why that's
Yeah,
necessary.
because it's not on the agenda. James and I have talked about the details of how to pull this off and
And
the
you're
numbers
right.
involved.
You're right, it is like a sound permit application through the state and Will's office and stuff. I just wanted to throw it out there, and then if there's, any y'all have comment, y'all get back, and then get back to me. But the application will be in tomorrow for that.
Thank you, James. I'll get back with you.
Okay.
And any council, if y'all want to speak to him at any time, please do, because he's very knowledgeable on this whole thing. Thank you. Okay. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed.
Thank you,
Item
James.
B, removal of one or more members of the Board of Directors of the Bandera Economic Development Corporation. Rebecca,
I'd like to make a motion to officially remove myself, Rebecca Gibson, from the Economic Development Corporation.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Darcy. I would second it if they let me second it. but- Any discussion?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind just making a statement from my perspective of, when I volunteered to fill a vacancy, I always intended it to be temporary, to get through setting the budget. The EDC has been in shambles now. Gosh, has it been a year? I don't know. In my opinion, we used to have a very high functioning and very worthy EDC with programs that benefited economic development for citizens who are business owners, that ultimately benefit the city in a number of ways through the incentive programs and many other things that a former board president, being Art Crawford, really took the initiative to accomplish. Through some personal trouble with people and personal agendas from others, that EDC no longer exists. It is my hope that from my seat here on council, that this council can work together to provide some direction, and that we can get people serving on that board that understand economic development and are willing to dedicate their time to the extent that some in the past have. So thank you for the opportunity to serve briefly, but I want to serve from here, so
Connie?
thank you.
So Rebecca, I was gonna offer up sort of a suggestion on how to move forward with the EDC. I've noticed quite a few issues. Number one is when I went to do some research as to what the EDC was doing, when I looked at the applications to figure out who to put on, I noticed there's been 0 minutes. There's been 9 meetings since June 25th, and there are no minutes on the website. So there's no oversight at all since I personally resigned as president. And I have not followed the EDC. I don't know what changes to the bylaws or anything had been met. So when I thought about how to be constructive as a council to put our functioning EDC back together again, whatever that future is and whatever the city council decides to give them as guidance, which has not happened for over a year, I would hope that, Rebecca, which you would have made 4, but I would highly recommend some people to be removed from the EDC, and then perhaps not necessarily leave it to where there's a quorum and then not fill those seats, but perhaps have the applicants meet in a workshop with the city council so that we can interact with them, really truly understand where they come from, what they bring to the table, so that we can make educated decisions on how to fill our EDC. I believe that there's enough on there to prove that the ones that need to be removed, and I'm willing to do that on the next, on the agenda item, to see if if my feelings are shared by the majority of the council. But I feel like it is frankly an embarrassment. And that's all. Thank you.
Any other comments? Darcy?
I will kind of echo what Tony says. I know Rebecca would like to be off, and I understand why. If I was still on the EDC, I would also really want to be off of the EDC. I think that it's a integrity question. I know that it's legal for someone on council to be on EDC, but like I've said numerous times, even when I was running for council, I don't think it's ethical to be on both. And that's my personal opinion. Again, I understand that it's legal to be on both. I will again say that I echo what Tony says. I don't know the applicants that have applied. I know that we have serious issues, and there are at least 3 people currently on the EDC that I don't think should be on the EDC, and that I have serious issues with being on the EDC, but I don't know that if we replace them, are we replacing them with anybody any better? So, you know, what do we do?
Well, what I want to put in here is that right now the EDC is just rocking along. You're absolutely right. We're not getting anything at all accomplished. And I hope someone will remove me, or I'll volunteer to remove, or whatever we need to do. But they're pulling against each other. We need an EDC that's working in one direction. So that's all I have to say. Tony,
That, we're the steering committee for the EDC. And
she resigned.
I said, we, the council, is the steering committee for the EDC. And, you know, that, it's going to be very difficult to get applicants. And I have been told this as I've recruited people that I've come across. I've approached the 2 applicants that ran against Christine. You know, I really felt like maybe they would step up, but it's gonna be difficult. And we've got a big, it was ugly. And we've got a big wound to heal, and we all need to decide as a council how we want the EDC to move forward as a majority and move forward like that positively. But right now, they don't have any direction. They don't have they don't have anybody taking leadership. And it's a sad thing, because this year has been the biggest year for our little town, and they could have used some help. They could have used some help from organizations like that we already have established, and they didn't get it. And the economic development and the money that we have to put back into our community, we could have done some really positive things within the guidelines.
Point of question. But aren't we getting off subject here a little bit? Wasn't the motion for Rebecca that she was resigning?
I would accept that. It probably is off mark. But my request was to hopefully keep Rebecca on, remove who we need to remove, set up a workshop, and basically work with the applicants to see if maybe, it's a test for them too. They may not want to do it, but if we can't even get them in the room to discuss, so, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to remove Rebecca. Any further comment?
Just one
Darcy?
quick one. Would you reconsider Rebecca?
May I ask a question in order to respond to Darcy? Without me, you still have a quorum on the EDC, do you not?
No.
Yes.
Can I answer that? The reason I asked was, would you hold your motion until we decide who we're removing, because we may not have a quorum. We haven't decided who we're removing yet. There's no
I get
reason,
it.
there's no reason why you can't at the end make a motion to remove yourself anyway. And there's also no reason why we can't have a workshop with the city council without a quorum of the EDC if they're just applicants at the time. And I respectfully asked, that's all.
Rebecca?
Because I'm really asking, because my answer is no. Like, I really don't. It's my preference not to. But even if the EDC is left without a quorum and they have to have appointments filled, really, what's the difference at this point? They're not functioning. So what difference does it make if they don't have a quorum until we appoint again at whatever point, at whatever time we do?
Tony?
There are a few things that come up that maybe a check needs to be, or something happens, and you need a quorum of an EDC, and if we don't have one, we don't have one. It doesn't mean that we'd have to have a meeting, unless you don't have to have any meetings until we appoint people unless it's absolutely needed. But that would be up to y'all, because y'all are the EDC, not me. But I'm just saying it would be reckless to put an EDC in that situation, in my opinion.
Well, then I would say don't remove others. I'm sorry. I can't.
Okay.
I can't do it.
On the vote. Okay, I respect that.
All right. So the motion is to remove Rebecca from EDC. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed.
Since you put it like that.
Rebecca?
I'd make a motion to appoint Tony to the EDC.
Well,
I
that came out of
We're
left
not
field.
on that part yet.
Oh, darn, we're not.
Yeah, hold your horses, girl.
It's a good idea. You can have it.
Just got my heart in check. Come on.
All right.
Sorry, we're still on
Any
removals.
other
I
motions?
apologize.
Any other?
Tony, seconds. Discussion? Darcy?
I will echo my letter to city council that I made as a citizen before I was on city council. There were questions about, emails being blind copied to a personal email, which everybody's aware of except for maybe Christine. And that has even further been confirmed since I've, since the time that I wrote to council, that, she was aware of it, she was able to, read the emails, had personal information about businesses. And then, of course, she's threatened to sue me and stuff, since then as well. So, I don't, when there's a question about integrity, somebody does, I don't know her, I don't have a personal agenda against her at all. This is, when there's a question about integrity, somebody shouldn't be, in city government or any government at all. And so I still have the same argument that I had as a citizen. I'm still a citizen of this city, and as a citizen, I'm concerned about this person having access to business information when there's a question about integrity.
Thank you. Tony?
So I echo all of that, but I would also like to say that it's been stated in the paper and all over social media that she adamantly stated that did not happen, even though there has been proved other ways to deal with it. So I just wanted to say that so that, I mean, she does claim that did not happen. My personal, when I was president on EDC, she was the admin. And there was a situation at the time when she went to resign that I also questioned. She had no loyalty to the board. She sat in our last meeting through the entire meeting without letting any of us know. She took action items and everything without letting any of us know that she was leaving. And then, but apparently she had already discussed it with Andrea Kavanaugh. And Andrea Kavanaugh also, which remained on the board and is on the board right now, did not let us know either. And it put us in quite a predicament because we relied on Deanna a great deal. All of this is just adding up to the fact that I don't believe she should have been put on there in the first place, because the professionalism in general. And I know that I'm just, my personal experience, and it's all in writing, all of that is in open minutes of exactly what happened. And so I'm not saying anything that, just in case people have not read those minutes, that's been clarified on there. So I'm not saying anything that.
Jerry?
I really don't think it's appropriate to be discussing people's integrity, especially when it's not based upon facts. And
There are
I
facts,
think there
Jerry, and
has
it's
been
not
people
appropriate for you to say
I'm talking
integrity.
right now, please. I have the floor.
Jerry has the floor.
Okay. Because there's dispute, there's disagreement as far as those facts, and I haven't seen the proof, and once again, I think it's very inappropriate to be talking about somebody's integrity and getting into personal comments about that person without the facts. And I think that if we're gonna do that, that should be in closed session. I don't think we should be discussing people in public like this.
Okay, I support you in that. I don't think we bring our personal feelings into this at all. Rebecca?
I just want to say that I was going to make a similar comment, primarily because when people aren't here to speak on their own behalf, I don't think it's fair to have a one-sided discussion. However, true and right, you feel you are, and in your mind you know you are. I think it's valuable to have all sides of the everyone's perspective shared in that situation. With the motion that's on the table to remove Deanna, it might be a stretch, and by all means object if you feel that it is, but in terms of board membership more in general, what are we trying to do here? I don't know what this council wants. And we went through this a few months back before the election where we removed everyone, and we were trying to I had thought start fresh, which was why we had some city employees and staff and board members step up to fill those roles, and then all these appointments started happening again, and it's just still in a mess. And I would just propose that we consider just removing the entire board once again and recreating this. Because picking on individuals just doesn't feel very fair. I think that if the council really wants a functioning EDC, then we're gonna have to work with people and set our expectation in a very clear way so that we don't set people up for doing the wrong thing or not liking the results of what ends up happening. So I guess that's my comment.
Darcy was first.
I will say that I agree that, nobody should be bad-mouthed or anything like that when they're not able to defend themselves, and that's why I kept my statement very direct in with what I wrote to council and my citizens to be heard. So if anybody wants to go back, and I still have that email that I sent to Jill as a citizen, I'm happy to share that, or it's an open record. But if anybody recalls, Deanna did write in the next open council meeting, and she did defend herself. So she did have a chance to defend herself, and I just would like to say that
Okay,
as
can
well.
we just move on to the object of this and the removal of Deanna at this particular point? Tony?
Okay, so I respect what Rebecca said, and I also feel as though it was just restating things that had specifically happened in open meetings, that it wasn't slanderous in any way, that it was just stating what had happened. So I may be wrong there. But to go to your point as far as where we're going forward and to remove the entire board, I don't disagree with that. If that feels as though it's more efficient, but I can recall my second of the.
Rebecca, you had your hand up.
Because I think the concern of removing an entire board would be administrative functions. Am I correct? And I'm asking our city attorney. I realize that this agenda item isn't related to administrative functions of the EDC, but it would be relevant should that happen, to know what would happen.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Well, so currently, there should be a process in place that involves co-signers from the city side as well, so, yeah, on any of those things. And, the reason why the recommendation from legal back, I don't even know when, right, was to remove the existing board that you were having issues with and place a mixture of council members, just a quorum that would consist of council members and staff, was for exactly that purpose, was to get it functioning the way you want and take the time to replace those folks with ones that you've interviewed. I understand Darcy's concerns, but the legislators, who are all smarter than us, right, have allowed that statutorily for on a type B board to have no more than 4. So you can have up to 4 folks who are council members or staff that serve on that board. So I guess my thing is, if you're going to remove your existing board, I do share your concerns with any administrative things that come up. I'd stand by our earlier recommendation that when you get to C and you're doing appointments, that you put in place a functioning board in case it is needed, while you take the steps that Tony's recommending to do a workshop and interview people who want to serve or educate them on what your vision is. And maybe some of the same people get reappointed. I don't know who's currently on your EDC, but I do think there is some risk with removing a board and not leaving. Because it's a corporation, right? And this is January is typically when corporations have their annual meeting. I don't know how your EDC has it set up. So there is some concerns I would have if it's going to be that way for an extended period of time without any functioning board.
Tony?
I just really don't want anybody to be put in the place that I was in when we could not get any direction from the council and we were struggling. So I appreciate Dan's words more than you know. If we did remove the entire board, I would not recommend that we rush into appointments until we do a workshop. And so there's gonna be a gap there based on what, you know, we're, like I said, a corporation without a board, a quorum of a board, I would be concerned with that. But I don't wanna be hasty in appointments either, because we're never gonna get it, we're never gonna fix it if we do that,
Well,
so.
with Rebecca and her resignation / motion to be removed, and removing Deanna, that would leave us with 4 on the board, which would still be a quorum.
That's not enough removals.
Hmm?
I don't know, we don't know that the removals are over.
I know, but at this point, this is where we would be, we'd still have a board.
Right.
So, but can we get to the vote?
So that's what I'm saying, it's like I would like to kind of resolve this on how we're moving forward,
Yeah,
because.
I'll rescind my motion, and so we can further discuss,
Thank you.
I mean, it's nothing, it's absolutely nothing personal against her whatsoever. I truly want a functioning EDC. This is absolutely nothing personal.
Well, we have a motion and a second to remove Deanna, so let's move.
No, she just
I
rescinded.
just rescinded, and Rebecca was willing to rescind her second, correct?
I was the second,
Oh, I'm sorry.
and I'm
Okay.
I'm willing. So the motion is off the table, right? Okay.
All in favor?
The motion was withdrawn.
Oh,
Which
I
one?
missed that part. Darcy, you withdrew your motion and
And
Tony
Tony
your
withdrew
second.
her second.
Okay, on with removal of one or more members of the board. Council?
So, are we still in discussion mode? Or can we, without a motion?
Well, we don't have a motion. Do you want to make another motion?
Make a motion
Do
to
you want-
discussion, for discussion.
For discussion only?
Second.
Thank you. My other concerns, I've been approached by many people in the city that did not vote one way for the mayor and is concerned that she's on the EDC. Many citizens that I did not solicit have voiced to me that they have concerns with Cindy Coffey being on our EDC. And they have requested that I ask for her to be removed as one. And then the other one that I personally is Andrea Kavanaugh, that was also running for city council. I don't believe she lives in the city again, and this is an ongoing thing with, I don't know if you're aware of that as a board, that if that's come up again, but it just seemed like that was always the thing where we never had the current information. And so those 3 people would be the people that I would like to vacate their seats at a minimum. And that has been based on a lot of discussion with people in town as well, unsolicited, so, thank you. That's my thoughts, all of my thoughts all at once.
If I could just interject too, that
Please.
Mayor Shellman is on the EDC, I feel responsible for that suggestion, but it was because she doesn't vote at the city council. So, it was a situation where if she is serving on the EDC, there was concerns expressed at one point about council members then, voting. I mean, when we, as you know,
Yeah.
from previous service on both. So I was like, well, the mayor doesn't vote here unless there's a tie, so. That was one of the reasons why we suggested that, and the council at the time twisted her arm until she volunteered, so.
That makes sense.
May I? As I said earlier, I agreed, as Rebecca did, to go through this temporarily. We got through the budget, we got that done, and now we're at a stalemate. And I would resign anyway come this next meeting, so I would have no problem at all being removed. Rebecca?
I'm trying to envision the best way forward or a way forward.
You're not
Does
the
the EDC have an upcoming meeting or any
January the
pressing?
28th.
Do you know what's on that agenda?
The same agenda, it's a pretty big agenda, it's the agenda we had for the last meeting in December, no, the special meeting when we didn't have enough to get a quorum.
Can you tell, I'm sorry,
No, that's okay.
Yes, Darcy?
can you tell us why you didn't have enough for a quorum?
A reason why? Well, I was waiting for COVID-19 results. Andrea said she couldn't be there, Cindy Coffey said she couldn't be there,
I wasn't there.
and you weren't there. Wouldn't be able to be there.
I mean, I do watch all the EDC meetings and I see a chronic, what seems to be an issue, it would be an issue with me if I was on the board, with Ms. Coffey. So I would also, I think Andrea seems to do a fine job and I didn't have an issue, working with her when I was on EDC at all. But I would have a hard time working with Ms. Coffey if I was on EDC, so, I would echo the comments about, removing her. She was a suggestion that I had as well. But again, you know, where do we go forward? Do we wanna remove everybody? You know, do we wanna remove a few, you know, and start fresh? I don't wanna be on the EDC again, I have too many commitments, but.
Tony?
I do too. I mean, it was a long, hard thought just to even run for city council, so, but being in the city, living in the city, all of us have, you know, it's hard to find people to volunteer that live in the city, so if it was needed to just be there through a workshop and through us building the EDC back, I would consider just for that short term. And I appreciate you saying that earlier, that caught me off guard, but I'm trying to put this together. I would like to suggest having a workshop on the 28th. Do whatever we're gonna do here, whether we have try to have a quorum of the EDC just to get us through the 28th agenda be canceled, make it a workshop with the city council, try to get some people, some actual applicants so that we can have a distance actual workshop, even if we decide we want to do, interview or something or whatever and have them rotate in or so, I don't know, but we need to get a workshop and we need to work, there's a lot of good applications and I just don't know any of them, I don't know. One said she voted in the city but didn't live in the city, I was confused by that. So, yeah, and I know that some of the ETJ stuff, I know that came across even in the voting thing, when people were voting for the election, so if y'all want to entertain that, I'm on board for a very short period of time, but I'm all for getting good applications and us, the majority, directing them because it needs to happen. I mean, our town is changing, people are needing it.
Okay, I'm gonna leave my comment for discussion when we actually get to the workshop, because it's about the bylaws and how restrictive they are, and I think we need to look at that too, because we've really excluded some very, very qualified applicants in the past, I believe. But, so, would it have a motion to, what? Tony?
I'd like to make a motion to remove Cindy Coffey, Andrea Janowski, and Deanna McCabe.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Oh, Christine, you're gonna second it?
Mhm.
Okay. We've already had an extensive conversation here. Do you want to lump them all into one motion? Okay, Rebecca.
So I realize that we haven't gotten to appointments yet, and that's our next agenda item, but that does only leave two serving, should that motion pass, that would leave two serving board members, correct? And just to clarify, Jerry Stevens is, did
Jerry
she?
has resigned
She did
and we've
resign.
accepted her resignation. It
Oh,
was
that's
me
right.
and Laura,
Okay, that's what I thought.
Laura Lasoya.
My apologies, I looked on the website and she's still listed,
Yeah,
and so
she
I
is.
did not know that. I thought we were still, so we would need 2 people.
No, she resigned, in November, I believe, or December.
Again, no minutes, no idea.
I understand.
So we're putting you on.
Any further discussion?
Already buckled in.
All in favor? Christine, Darcy, Tony are in favor. Those opposed? Jerry and Rebecca are opposed. Okay, any other on item B?
I hope not.
I was about to item C. Appoint of one or more members to the Board of Directors of the Bandera Economic Development Corporation. Do y'all want to table that until after the workshop?
Are you suggesting table,
I mean,
Without a-
postpone, not.
so you would be leaving the EDC
the
without a
appointing.
quorum?
Well, if y'all think that there's some people in here that you'd like to appoint, that's fine and dandy with me. Tony?
Sorry.
So first of all, I would ask Christine if you would consider for short term while we do the recruitment. And it wouldn't, I mean, before we move further.
I
Jerry?
object, she's not one of the applicants on here, so we don't have an application in front of us to look at.
Do we have to?
No.
Rebecca?
I would just make a motion, to appoint Tony and Christine to the EDC.
Second.
Okay, Tony, Christine, seconded by Darcy. Yes, Rebecca?
So my comment is, I mean, Jerry, I hear what you're saying, we don't have an application, and Dan, please feel free to clarify if I'm wrong in my motion. But what I would like to suggest is just that we have a couple of council members step up and temporarily serve, like we had suggested before, but things have been amok for so long that we weren't able to accomplish anything. So let's get a workshop together, let's get all, and there are more applicants than are in this packet that we have seen over the past year. That I would appreciate the opportunity to reach out to those people, see if they're still interested, and whether they are or not, I think a workshop could be helpful to hear from the citizens in the direction of the EDC. So I'm sorry, but please and thank you. And Dan, if you would answer about
So,
Jerry's question.
Unless you adopted a local ordinance or something that requires you to have applications before you make appointments to any of your boards or commissions, it's not anything in the statute that requires that. So I don't personally know if y'all have made that requirement, Jill might, but if you haven't
I'm not
done
aware.
that, then it's not a requirement. I mean, obviously, that's a good practice, but it's not required, and what I'm hearing you say is this is not intended to be anything other than, as I suggested, placeholders while you vet applications, do a workshop, and get replacements in. So.
Thank you.
Okay, any more discussion on appointing Tony and Christine to EDC?
I would just
Go ahead.
like to know if you're in absolute objection to serving.
No, I'm not an absolute objection. I'd be willing to do it for short term.
I have one question for the attorney. I know it's been brought up many, many times before about casting votes for ourselves. Since Christina and I are on the same vote, I mean, can I vote for myself like I do in the ballot?
Yeah, absolutely, vote
Okay.
for yourself.
Because that has been many times, I have always voted for myself, but at many times I
Don't
have
be
been.
modest, just go ahead and vote for yourself.
Okay, can I put 2 hands up? There you go. All right, very good, thank you, Dan. for clearing.
Okay, further discussion? All in favor? Christine, Darcy, Tony, Rebecca in favor, opposed? Jerry's opposed. Motion passes. Okay, item D, discussion of possible action on a resolution amending the City of Bandera personnel policy to include a compensatory time off policy. I think you have in,
I accidentally Questions that were asked at the last meeting, I put in the packet under executive session, but they're in the actual packet.
You did email, sorry,
Yes, Rebecca.
you did email those responses.
Right.
And they're in your packet under executive session for, under compensatory time, there's two executive session packets.
This is what I believe.
Oh, and his
The
salary.
questions that we asked the attorney are in that packet. Yes.
Thank you.
I put them in there with the salaries, not thinking because on the top it says attorney-client privilege, so it wouldn't be something I could really put
Gotcha. Thank you.
in your manila envelope.
And so, where is that?
A or B, Jim?
So I did have one question.
I wasn't listening.
Tony, Darcy, that is the response to the email that you sent me, Tony. And I think I gave this to you quite some time ago, so it's not anything.
Yeah, I just summarized the questions that all of the
That all
council had,
council came
sent
up
it to
with,
you
yes.
to, yeah. So basic, I mean, does somebody wanna? So may we allow exempt employees to earn comp time? I didn't actually see, Dan, where was that answer? That was the only one I couldn't find in. I mean, I know it's, gives the authorization above, but I wasn't sure about the exempt versus non-exempt.
So, yes, exempt employees can earn comp.
Okay.
Yes.
And so then it would have to be at a rate at 1.5, was the next question answered. And then may we cap the comp time such as shall not exceed. You can cap the accrual, however you want to typically do it for a fiscal year. Should be clear in the personnel policy manual and state who is authorized to approve such requests. May we dictate any use restrictions such as shall be used within 3 months? Yes, you can put that in the policy for the use of comp time however you want it, as long as they either are allowed to have the time off or paid for if it's not used. If the employee works, they have to get paid. May we have the option to buy back unused? Technically, it's not a buyback, but rather a comp time limitation on how many hours you can use. See explanation above. So those are the clarifications on record. Thank you. I don't even think I asked for the floor. I think I took it. So my apologies.
Jerry,
Yeah, I'm probably actually confused on this. It kind of skips here. The question was, may we allow exempt employees to earn comp time? And then the answer is no. That's why I say I haven't had time to read this all through, so. Am I missing something here, or?
No, I'm sorry, may I ask, because since I'm the one that wrote the bullets. So, that's the one that I missed, that was the reason I asked that, was because it says, may we allow exempt employees to earn comp time as a question? And then it says, if yes, then, and there's another question, that's what the actual no is
Yeah, the no
about.
was towards the other question.
And
too.
so,
Oh, okay.
so that was actually the only one I
Okay.
missed,
That's referring to the question of whether it can be something other than time and a half.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's yes, I'm sorry.
So it was.
Yes, they
yeah.
can earn comp time, they just don't get paid for it like if they leave. So like if Will has 523 hours and he quits, we don't have to pay him for 523 hours of comp time. However, if he wanted to use that before he left, he could.
yes, Jerry.
And once again, not having time to read this, is, that's based on straight time or time and a half? The comp time is to be paid at regular rate of pay, correct?
So
And it's a
they
question.
earn it at time and a half, and they're paid at their regular rate of pay, which is at time and a half. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Do you understand what the distinction there is? Like, so they're earning it for each hour that is comp time is an hour and a half of comp time. But when it's paid out at straight pay, but because it's earned at an hour and a half per hour, it's
Got it.
it's the same difference, right?
So I'm good with the policy as I wrote it, with the questions answered and clarified, that we could go forward with that one, but I don't know if anybody else is.
I do have a question. So clarifying that, if they terminate and they still have comp time on the books, they don't get paid or they do get paid? Because my understanding is if you work, you get paid. So if you terminate, we have to pay out the comp
So
time.
if you're exempt and the personnel policy says that you have to use it or you lose it at separation, you don't get paid if you're exempt. If you're non-exempt, you will be paid.
Okay.
You're required to be paid.
If
You're
you're
either gonna be
terminated or you
right.
resign.
If
Okay.
you elected or you chose or wanted comp time as an hourly employee, as a non-exempt employee, rather than taking overtime, if you took comp time, you're gonna get paid one way or the other.
Okay,
But you can put a cap on the amount they're
Yes.
allowed to accrue.
yeah, I did read that, but I wasn't clear on if they were exempt, how that paid out. Okay.
Rebecca?
Question for clarification, we have the draft of the comp policy that was provided, by our attorney's office, and then we have the draft that Tony, wrote, and I know that one is in legal language that we can actually adopt as a policy, and one is, has a lot of good ideas in it, but do we need to reformat that if that's the preference of council to go with more of
Yeah.
the things that you had outlined?
Yeah, mine was only for layman's terms so that we could discuss ideas and then that would be folded into whatever the format the manual was. I mean, so that we all agreed on those points as they stated and they needed to be in there. Or did disagree, if we agreed with 10 and majority didn't want 2, you know, I mean, that's the reason I laid it out, to make it more simple to go through.
Dorothy?
I know, I'm probably the top proponent of we need to get this handled, and we need to get it handled, quickly. However, knowing that we've got all of this to go through and this is gonna be very long and we really, really need to pick through this comp stuff and, it need to be right because, it hasn't been right. And I have, done my homework and really looked at this, as I'm sure, most of us have. I would like for us to make a motion that we table this one more time and really be able to look at it and be able to spend the time that's necessary to pick through this and make the right decision on it. So I do make a motion to table this until the next.
Rebecca seconds. We'll table it till January the 21st if this motion passes. Any other discussion on comp time policy?
Yeah, whether we table this or whatever at this point, what was the discussion before about the amount of overtime that we were gonna allow them to, or comp time, I'm sorry, allow to be accrued? Just refreshing it.
Do you have it at?
I was looking for it.
I think it was 60, except for law enforcement, and there's a little bit more, 60.
I think it was actually, maybe, it was actually 40, I had the.
So are we talking about Tony's outline or the one that was drafted?
What we're proposing, or what's
The changes that we're
proposed.
making.
Yeah,
Okay, so all other, law enforcement 80, all others capped at 60. Is what is in the policy from the attorney.
Actually,
still the case?
it was shall not, we weren't touching the law enforcement at all, cause I think I had written in there that it did, and
Okay,
it was
if we're
shall
gonna-
not exceed
If we're
40.
gonna table this, let's table it.
well,
Can I
carry
just
on the
finish that
discussion?
question? Shall not
We may not.
shall not exceed 40 hours. An employee may request permission to accrue up to 80 should we deem that it was not their fault that they couldn't take the 40.
so is that changed? Or is there
I
a
didn't
proposal to
change
change that?
That's still just a draft.
So, we discussed previously that if the answers to the questions that we had came back in a positive manner, which it seems like they have, is that correct?
That's what I got out of it. Yeah.
Then I don't see why we don't go ahead and approve it.
Yeah, because we talked extensively at every point and nobody had objections with what I suggested. That doesn't mean that we won't have any, but yeah, I mean, that's how I recall the conversation.
And I think the agreement was at the time
Yeah.
that as long as these came back affirmative.
That's
Yeah,
how I heard
positive.
it, yeah, but there was no
Yeah,
motion, there was no motion, so.
Okay,
Darcy?
alright, so that's kind
Thank
of
you,
weird,
Mayor.
but,
Just one out of several objections that I would have to the one that Tony submitted would be law enforcement. Even what Will said in the meeting was that, their overtime doesn't start until 86 hours. So that's all stuff that we've gotta look at and really pick through.
Okay, again,
I mean, so,
The motion on the table is to table again, this particular item. And I have a second. It's not a discussion of how the comp policy is going to go, so we'll vote on that and then we'll see where this goes.
It just, ma'am, we are talking about the policy itself, right? I mean, okay. Because law enforcement wasn't in the conversation at all.
No, but we're talking about just tabling
Discussion on
this
Right,
particular item. till
but the
Jan-
reason to table it and not table it is we don't have any control over law enforcement anyway. So if that's the only reason we're tabling it, why are we tabling it?
it's not, I
So,
said one of many.
Because I have a motion and a second.
I wasn't putting words in your mouth, I said if, so. okay.
Rebecca.
Okay,
I
know.
have another reason to table it is simply that the document that you prepared has not been vetted by our attorney's office for legality. So when we adopt something for policy, it needs to be reviewed by the attorneys. So whatever we decide to change, adjust, according to that, it needs to be put into the format that it needs to be put into.
Tony?
So we've done this before, and we have said we approve these points, and then it goes to the attorney to change the wording. He did get the attachment, right? I mean, I sent the attachment with him, I pulled the questions we had out of it, so it all went. I don't know if you reviewed it or just the questions, but I'm just saying that it,
So here's what I know. I know that last year, we had an issue. We suggested y'all adopt a compensatory time policy. Our labor lawyer prepared an FLSA compliant compensatory time policy. We sent it with a resolution for adoption, and y'all sent back something else. So that was not a compensatory time policy. So if that's what you want, I'm okay with that, but it's not gonna stay in the format that you sent. So if y'all wanna vote on whatever her ideas were, that's fine. You can vote on that and we'll turn it into a policy and bring it back at the next meeting. Or you can table the whole discussion and decide which way y'all wanna go. It makes me no difference.
Darcy?
I call the vote.
Tony?
I'd like to say that it wasn't my ideas, I was the one that volunteered to put everything that was said in a format that we could discuss and talk about one by one and bring things up so that we could say yay or nay, and then it get rolled into a compensatory package. I'm okay with tabling or, I mean, whatever, but I'm just saying that I don't.
Okay, could we go to the vote now, please? All in favor of tabling? All in favor of tabling. Okay, January the 21st. Okay, this is where I hand this meeting over to Rebecca.
Okay, item 5, closed session. The city council will meet in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, section 551071, to conduct a private consultation with its attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter, to wit, available legal options for addressing complaints filed by Councilmember Roos against Mayor Suzanne Shawman and City Secretary Jill Shawman. It is 7:04. Okay, it is 7:46. I'm reconvening the open session, the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Bandera. Item 6, it's 7:46. Item 6, closed session. The City Council will meet in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, section 551074, personnel, to hear a complaint or charge against Mayor Suzanne Shawman, to wit, violations of the City of Bandera Code of Ordinances, Section 1.03065, Statement of Purpose, Section 103.068, comply with the law, Section 103.069, conduct of city officials and employees, Section 103.075, political advocacy, Section 103.076, confidential information, Section 103.077, use of public resources, Section 103.080, where am I? Policy, role of city officials and employees, Section 103.082, positive workplace environment, and Section 103.083, implementation. Mayor Shaman may request said discussion be held as a public hearing. Mayor Shaman, would you prefer to hold this as a public hearing?
Yes, I want to do it in an open session.
Okay, so we will continue in open session. And the complainant in this matter is Councilmember Roost, and I will turn the floor over to you for your statements and for your side of the story.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
On October 8th, 2020, Jill Shelton audio recorded a meeting at City Hall between herself, Councilmember Don Clark, Mayor Suzanne Shaman, and myself. Ms. Shelton transcribed a portion of this meeting and read it at the October 15th City Council meeting. I will prove that the violations I'm accusing the mayor and Ms. Shelton of were blatant and not based on hearsay or secondhand knowledge. The violations will be proven through their own statements and comments throughout the recording.
Okay, Mayor Shaman, do you have an initial rebuttal, and then we'll go through?
Well, actually, all I want to say to council is that the discussion about the whole election thing happened. It was election season. We were talking about the election. I was talking to Don Clark for the most part, and I did ask Jill about the signs, but only because they were delivered to her mother's workplace, and that's why she would know if they'd been delivered. And I said ordered, I meant delivered. Be that as it may, I did say order. 7 of these complaints are based on that conversation, I do believe. So yes, I talked about the election. But what you're seeing, I also believe, is Councilman Russ's interpretation of the ordinance, and I don't find that I think he's kind of stretching it in several places. He says here that,
Can you tell us which
Yes.
which one you're on, please?
Oh,
Page 1, page 2?
okay, well,
Or would it be okay to just go
Just
through these
in
in
general.
order? Okay,
mhm.
I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to be in general here
Okay.
because, yes, there are 7 complaints that are related to the election campaign. Obviously, I talked about the election campaign. I just want to move forward, guys. Let's get this behind us and move forward. Councilman Russ said I attacked him personally. That whole meeting was an attack on everybody from the first 30 minutes. Councilman Russ says I talked about other employees and firing them. That was the subject of the meeting. He also says that, oh, there we go with the signs again. One thing that I'm concerned about is the confidential information. And talking with the HR manager and a city council member, can you hear me now? I don't feel like that is information that was confidential, because we were discussing the future of a city employee, as well as an investigation conducted by the council. The other one that I really have an issue with is, and here we go, personal election. Item number 9, where it says that I violated Section A and B of 103.083, that I have signed a statement that I had read and understood the Code of Ethics and Conduct and had just recently been through a training that violated sections of this ordinance. However you want to find counsel, I don't care, but not one person at this table has signed a statement that they have read this ordinance and understand it and have an opportunity to answer questions. There's not one in anybody's file.
Okay.
So the last one is the assassination word. What do you want me to say? I said it. I mean, there's nothing else to say about it, so if you wanna ask questions and whatever you wanna do, it's up to you, but I would like us to just get this behind us and move on.
Okay, Jerry, did you indicate that you had something to say?
Well, were we gonna go through, were we gonna read each one of these?
That's how I will direct the meeting after the two of you are finished, but at that point, I'm gonna open it up for council members' questions and comments.
Okay, and.
And I will do that in the form of the order.
Okay, and I would like to request that we play back that portion of the audio, if we can.
Do you have a start time that you?
Yeah, 29 minutes and 21 seconds.
And you wanna play from that point to the end of the meeting?
I think we could do it in pieces, but I think it'd be easiest and quickest, most efficient, if no one else has an objection.
Okay, yes, Darcy.
I've personally listened to the audio several times. I don't really feel that it's necessary unless anybody else on council feels it's necessary.
I'll call on myself there. Sorry, Susanna. I personally object to listening to the recording from 2921. I have listened to the recording at least 3 times, maybe 4, and I don't feel like playing just the second part of the recording would be in context. I think that the first part of the meeting is relevant to set the tone, and I realize that's the focus of your complaint, but that's not the entire context. So, and then I really don't want to play the hour-long conversation. If you want to, if you have marked times for specific pieces as we go through, I would entertain that.
I felt that since it is an open, that everyone should get the whole story. And all of my complaints are based on everything from 29 minutes and 20 seconds on. There is none of my complaints that has anything to do with the previous 30 minutes approximately, the first 30 minutes.
Okay, yes, Darcy.
The audio is open to the public. It's been put on the Prophet has released it, and then it's also open if anybody wants to put in an open records request. So.
I'm in agreement, yes.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay, and
Okay.
so I stand by, if you have specific times
Fine.
marked at portions, like we can place snippets,
Oh,
but,
I did have one, sorry.
yes.
I was just gonna say that, if all of us listened to it and we didn't have any questions and we don't need the recording for clarification, I mean, we're not playing this for the public, we're open to the public to be transparent, but if we all understand it and clear what we heard and we're hearing what you say and we're mapping it to your complaint, I do think that that's unnecessary, I guess, to hear, because we're.
It's fine.
Okay, so I'm gonna speak to the order. In order of the City Council of the City of Bandera, Texas pursuant to Chapter 1, Article 103, Division 3, Code of Ethics, Section 103271, making any findings and issuing any reprimands necessary to Mayor Suzanne Shulman for violations of the Code of Ethics and conduct for city official and employees. Part 1, findings upon the allegations. Number 1, Section 103065, Statement of Purpose. The citizens and businesses of Bandera are entitled to have fair, ethical, and accountable local government which earns the public's full confidence for integrity. The strong desire of the city of Bandera to fulfill this expectation therefore requires that city officials, both elected and appointed, and employees, comply with both the letter and spirit of the laws and policies affecting the operations of government, be independent, impartial, and fair in their good judgment and actions. The office or position be used for the public good, not for personal gain. To this end, the Bandera City Council has adopted this code of ethics and conduct for city officials and employees to ensure public confidence in the integrity of local government and its effective and fair operation. So before I go on to ask for a motion, what I plan to do for each is to read that piece, ask for a motion, whether to sustain or not sustain, and then open for discussion. Is that, yes? Okay. Does everyone feel like that's a fair way to move forward? Okay.
So he's gonna present each section. He's gonna have, like, each thing
She'll
he's gonna
start
have
off
his.
and then I'll,
Okay, I'm just curious, okay.
Is that sufficient?
That's sufficient.
Okay. So, but do start with a motion or start with discussion?
That is entirely up to you.
Is it? Okay, then let's discuss. Yeah? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jerry. So on that complaint, go right
on
ahead.
the first complaint,
Yes,
1.03.065, statement of purpose.
yes.
You read through the first part, so my comment is I believe the mayor violated this section by openly discussing her personal election campaign for personal gain while at City Hall with City Secretary Jill Shelton and Councilmember Don Clark on an audio recording on 10/8/2020. Purchase of signs, placement of signs, and her opponent were all discussed. Discussion of city employees also took place and that they should be fired, which wasn't impartial or fair.
Okay, so we've heard the complaint, and Suzanne Shulman, would you care to make a rebuttal to the specific complaint?
No, again, I just don't think that it's his interpretation of the ordinance. That was the discussion, I can't deny it, and it's up to you to make your decision.
Okay. Do I have any council members with questions for either party or comments, general comments? Yes, Darcy?
I have a comment. I mean, I made comments on everything, on all of them, so,
Good.
my comment would be, based off of, I listened to the, recording numerous times and, listened to both sides, and my, thoughts did not change after listening to the comments. So my comments are that, the mayor's campaign activity did not seem to affect the impartial running of the city, which is part of the statement of purpose. The conversation of the employees are within the scope of the mayor's job, as well as the HR director's job, and the councilman is the one that brought up the employee issues. And that's within the scope of the mayor, the HR director, and city council members to discuss. So I don't see a problem with it. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Is there any other comment on this section? And I realize that some of the complaints that we'll hear, some of that is gonna be repetitive and applied to different codes of ethics, so if our comments seem repetitive, that could be why. One thing that I will state with certainty is that it was former council member Clark that initially and repeatedly brought up Mayor Shulman's reelection, and it was not responded to repeatedly until much later in the meeting. So whether that's a defense or not, I find it relevant because the allegations to me seem to make it seem like there was some big conspiracy going on to push for reelection, and I don't know, use some kind of persuasion or influence of office, and in the context of the conversation and the fact that the former council member was the one who repeatedly brought up the topic and pushed that topic was significant, in my opinion. Are there any other council comments on the first complaint? I will call for a motion, and to clarify for those watching, a sustained finding states that the evidence supports the allegation, and an unsustained finding denies the allegation. So the city council finds that this allegation is either sustained or unsustained. Darcy, would you like to make a motion?
Would. I'd like to make a motion that we find the allegation in section 1.03.065 statement of purpose unsustained.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Christine seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? 4 in favor, and Councilmember Roos opposed. Number 2, section 103068, comply with the law. City officials and employees shall comply with the laws of the nation, the state of Texas, and the city of Bandera in the performance of their public duties. These laws include, but are not limited to, the United States and Texas constitutions, laws pertaining to conflicts of interest, election campaigns, financial disclosures, employer responsibilities, and open processes of city government, and city ordinances and policies. Jerry?
I feel that it's blatant and obvious that she violated this particular section based upon the election campaign and the discussion of her election campaign on the audio. And I think it's very clear in that section that it relates to election campaigns, that you're not to do that.
Okay, I believe we've heard your complaint. Mayor Shellman, do you have anything further?
I have no comment to that other than what has already been said.
Okay. May I ask for some clarification from council on this item? So I'm reading comply with the law, and so where I've underlined, did I do something? You okay?
That's me.
Ugh. Are we good?
Sorry, guys.
Where I'm reading election campaigns, are we supposed to be referencing election law right there? I mean, as we're referencing the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of Texas, and laws pertaining to conflicts of interest, laws pertaining to,
Election campaigns.
yeah, okay, so, what I feel like I'm hearing from Councilmember Roos is the
By the
fact
way,
that,
it's Russ.
Russ, I'm so sorry, thank you for correcting
okay.
me. I've heard it different ways.
I know, that's okay.
Thank you. What I'm hearing from Councilmember Russ is that the fact that an election or a campaign was mentioned at all whatsoever is a violation of election law. And is that the spirit of this statement in our code of ethics?
So the State Ethics Commission is who election law violation complaints are filed with.
Okay,
They're the arbiters of when anybody complains about someone else electioneering or the placement of campaign signs or anything such as that, they're the ones who take those complaints and determine or refer those out to local authorities as to any violations. So in here where it talks about laws pertaining to election campaigns, then yes, it's talking about the election code, campaign laws and things such as that. There is a provision within there where that prohibits the use of city resources in a way that supports one candidate or another. So whatever that is interpreted to be, I mean I think that's the complaint being made by Councilman Russ. Instead of the ethics commission, you are determining that.
Okay.
Oh, I think that just answered my question. Instead, this was never forwarded or
I do
reviewed by
not-
anybody else okay.
have
I guess
no-
that was my question on why it was coming to us instead of.
Councilman Russ can respond to that, I have no
Okay.
idea if it was.
Councilman Russ.
Ask that again? 'Cause I didn't hear it
I
clear.
guess when I was listening to him talk, he said that the state was the one that was the one that governed over the election laws. And so he said we're acting on that behalf, and so I was wondering why it wasn't forwarded to them on someone that would clearly be more educated in the violation.
Well, because that also violates our local code for about electioneering.
In your opinion,
How would
Well, I mean,
that,
it's
Dan,
very
how would that
clear.
be?
I mean, no, that's not in my opinion. That's exactly how it reads. It's very specific.
Wait,
He's referring
I want to
to-
make sure I understand what's being
And
said.
I think he's referring to number 4, which is actually
Resources.
the next one, which is political advocacy.
Okay.
That's correct.
Rebecca.
Yes, Darcy. Thank you.
So that would be my comment on this one, would be that this isn't for us to determine, at least not in this section, but rather for the Secretary of State or law enforcement to determine until or unless she's found guilty of something with the law, or, with the Secretary of State or law enforcement that she's violated something, or even if she were to be found guilty of the next one, but this one was filed first, I don't see how we could sustain this one.
I would just like to make a statement that all this is directly out of our own
I understand that.
code of ethics.
Yes, but it's
That's
referencing
cited
laws.
directly.
It's referencing law,
Yeah,
not law
well, there's a
enforcement.
reason they reference that.
Sorry.
There's a reason that that's referenced.
Does anyone have further comment on number 2?
I guess
I'm sorry, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, just to kind of close that little thought, I hear what Russ, now it's gonna be hard to do because I always called you, I always thought you pronounced the E. So Councilman Russ, I guess I understand why we're referring to other laws, and so it's like if they were in violation and they were found by the Secretary of State, which clearly knows the violation of that particular law that we're referring to much better than I, if they were to find that
Right.
and to do whatever they did, they were found guilty or sustained or however proved, then it would come back to us as a review to put our own spin on it as a reprimand or sanction or whatever, because they were the ones that would be actually determining, because I'm not gonna, but that's what I understand. I mean, that's what y'all,
That's what
Okay.
I'm thinking.
So, the city council finds that this allegation is, yes, Darcy, a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, I make a motion that we find a violation of section 1.03.068, comply with the law as unsustained, that Mayor Suzanne Shawman did not violate that section.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Tony seconds the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, 4 in favor and Jerry opposed. Is my sound okay? Okay. Okay, thank you. Number 3, section 103069, conduct of city officials and employees. The professional and personal conduct of city officials and employees must be above reproach and avoid even the appearance of impropriety. City officials and employees shall refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks upon the character or motives of other city officials and employees, board, commission, and committee members, and the public. Councilmember Roos.
Russ.
Well, you all
Shoot.
listened to it.
Sorry, Russ.
You listened to the audio. You heard the attacks yourself, so that's all I have to say. There was attacks on Public Works Director. There was even attacks on a previous council member, Glenn Clark.
Okay, we're
And
talking
there was
about
attacks on me.
against Suzanne,
Yeah,
against the mayor.
He's saying Suzanne said those things against those people.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not what I recall from the recording, but,
That's not what happened in the recording. either.
okay. That's okay. I
And I
hear
didn't
you,
mean
though.
to put words in your mouth, I thought that's what
That's
you
okay.
meant. I take back what I said.
I just wanted to make sure that we're referring to the complaints, about Suzanne. And I know that everything, the whole conversation got really
She
confusing at
attacked
times.
Martin, she attacked Jay.
I'll let you rebut in
so-
a second.
That's not how it happened either.
That's
Okay,
why I
okay, wait,
wanted
we're
to
not
play
gonna do the
recording
back
to
and
begin
forth. Jerry, it's my understanding that you finished your statement about your
Yeah, go ahead.
complaint, so may I please have your rebuttal?
The discussion was, the whole meeting started out because Councilman Russ wanted to put Jay on the agenda again, and he wanted him to have the full meal deal all the way up to termination. It was so close to the election, we had so much up in the air. I felt it was really, really not the time to be making a decision that has that sort of impact just before the election with new candidates coming onto the board. So eventually he agreed to take termination off the board, and I did put it on the agenda on the 15th. What I said about Martin, and I will put it right out here, when the investigation was done, at that time I thought Martin had made a serious mistake and should have been fired. However, I think Jay made the right decision because, and I've had a discussion with Martin too, by the way, made the right decision because Martin has certainly moved forward, and I did compliment him saying he's done great things, but I didn't like the way that he did them. And as far as you, that's the motive that I attacked, was why do you want to put Jay right now in front of this council, that council at the time?
Okay, I know I have comments, does anybody else start? Okay, I'll go.
You didn't raise your hand, did you?
I did not.
So I'm sorry, I'm addressing myself to address you all. In regards to this part of the complaint, I, for one, observed abusive and verbal attacks, coming from, and I wanna, sorry, I might be speaking more of the generality of the whole thing than about this specific complaint. I know there were ugly things said, and I don't think it's appropriate. Had this conversation not been recorded, I understand why it was recorded, but this whole mess is happening. Councilmember Russ wouldn't even have any knowledge of this conversation having taken place if it hadn't been recorded and to use against him for different complaints. So it's a situation that I don't think you know, don't make assumptions about where I'm going with my comments. It's a situation that we're in because this conversation was recorded and because everybody was able to, it was put out there into the public, and even my daughter and her private medical information was mentioned and put out to the public, that this has taken place. And the slander that took place, that this is referring to, is very apparent. I don't know what happens on a day-to-day basis if this is kind of typical to be just bashing people in this office among one another. And if it were me having been talked about that way, it might hurt my feelings. I don't know. This is a really disappointing aspect for me, in my opinion. It's a conversation that Jerry wouldn't have knowledge of if the recording hadn't been made to use against him in the first place. I think it's really embarrassing. So I don't know how anybody else feels about this part of the complaint, but that's what I have to say about it. Tony?
I'll go next. I mean, I was listening to it, moving right along, and then all of a sudden, it's like, we've been through a lot, all of us. And the last 6 years, we have put this city back together. And I have known that there has been issues all along with just, there's something underlying that's happening and undermining. We've all blamed it on the small office. We've all blamed it on the fact that there is no privacy for HR. That we've all, we've blamed it on a lot of things, and we've all worked in small offices. And I'm certainly not standing here all righteous, but there's definitely a tone in this particular conduct. When I heard that, to me, all of my fears were confirmed. Every one of them. Of all of the things that I thought might be happening, and I was totally disgusted. I mean, and embarrassed. And the fact that this is out. And I realized what led up to it. I realized this has been a hard year. I realized we have a lot of strong personalities. I realized we have a very small square footage. And I will say on record that all of the people involved in this, that has been elected, have really good things to bring to the table. And I voted for Suzanne. It wasn't an easy vote to cast, but I thought long and hard, and all of the things that she had brought to the table. But this is the part that, and I've said it openly to her. I said, I do not trust your judgment when it comes to personnel and discussing personnel issues. I have told her that, and I have told her that and told her that. And this confirmed everything I had to say. By standing in an office, so I'm going to close with this, because I could probably go on for a while and actually bring up specifics, which I don't want to do because it was really an awful thing to listen to. But I take issue with not that something happened and that you're trying to figure out how to go about reprimanding an employee or getting to know what the situation is and taking that person to task. The fact that you discussed an outcome and had already made the assumption of what needed to happen within this office, when we all know that you can hear from room to room what was being discussed, an outcome of that, and that you had already determined what needed to happen and did not have the respect of the chain of command or the governing body, which I have been preaching, chain of command, don't take people's authority away, treat them respectfully. And this to me was just an indicator of everything that has been wrong in that aspect. Because we've got a lot right. We've got a lot right, and I'm not going to sit there and say that we don't. But this type of stuff is exactly what keeps us from moving forward and being better. And that is my personal opinion. And I hate that it was recorded. I don't even want to know what caused, I can't even imagine what led up to the point of the two of you deciding to record this. But as bad as it is, I'm glad it happened. Because even though it continued probably far longer than the two of you ever expected it to do, because it's now coming back to bite y'all, I think that we need to get it all out. We need to address it. We need to be real about it. And we need to move forward and be better. Just be better. That's my preaching. So,
Thank you, Tony. Darcy?
While I do echo that it makes me sad, it definitely made me sad to hear what I heard. We all know that what happens in offices and I've worked in jails and prisons most of my life, so there's definitely a lot of bad talk about other people, other shifts and stuff like that, and I've even been part of some of that talk myself, unfortunately. I will say this, and this is probably gonna end up being a question to our attorney when we go back into closed session. However, my question goes back to the actual complaint, although I am deeply saddened by the conversation that happened. When I listened to the conversation, what I looked at was the actual complaint by the councilman, and that was that she verbally attacked him and his character. And it does say along with other city employees. I don't, necessarily see that she verbally attacked him and his character. Now, that's something that I think that we need to consider along with this. I do think that definitely there was talk about other city employees, and that's something that's definitely gotta be considered. And so while the other things are very easy for me to decide, this one absolutely was not easy for me to decide, and frankly, I'm not ready to make a motion on this one because I don't know exactly how I feel, other than sad.
I'm sorry, I don't know who had their hand up first. Can you tell me?
I just wanted to make
Okay,
one point
Tony.
about, and it's a clarification really. I think when we talked about how we were gonna go through this and talked about general, that I believe Dan, or it was summarized of what had happened, but there was going to be, this statement is a summary, and so, and that's a good point, because he did say myself. So I don't know if there was more to add to that specifics or
Just to
something.
clarify, this is Councilman Russ's, taken directly from his complaint.
Right.
What I said was, in addition to this, you may hear other evidence or other testimony.
Oh,
and
okay, thank you. Yeah, you're right, you did say exactly like that.
Okay. Yes,
And this is not about me, okay? This could have been any of us, okay, that was there. And so you won't find some of these complaints having anything to really do with me, personally. And that's the case here too. These are not just about me. In fact, a lot of this is not so much about me, but the whole attitude about it, the actions that were being taken in that discussion.
Tony.
So in light of that, this is specified just the way he wrote it, and is it just like we have an agenda item that we make the motion where we find part and not part, if we make a statement if we find or not find,
Let's ask,
I will clarify.
thank you.
So you all have the audio recording, so regardless of what he's stated here in his complaint, you've heard the audio. If you believe what you heard on that audio is in violation of this section of the Code of Ethics, then you can sustain this aspect of the complaint without specifying whether or not.
It was
it's
against
irrelevant.
somebody,
That's right.
okay.
It's irrelevant who was being verbally attacked. This isn't a criminal complaint where we
Right,
have to
okay.
prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt.
Thank
If you believe that this has been violated, you can sustain it.
Is there any further discussion on this item?
If we may, just have a second to read the section again, because it, it does say abusive conduct, personal charges or verbal attacks upon the character or motives of other city officials and employees, board, commission, committee members, and the public.
May I are you through with your statement? I just want to point out that this was actually brought up at our open meeting earlier tonight in a different agenda item, this conduct specifically. And I think that we are all at times guilty of gossiping or talking about other people when they're not present. So I don't want to come across as hypocritical, and I don't want to shame anybody that this is about, because nobody here is free from these charges at 100% of the time. I think it's best for all of us and for the city to not behave in this way. And if someone's being discussed, especially in the context of city business, that if anything's being discussed about them, that they're present to give their point of view and their perspective. And I think it just, we work against ourselves when we're not upfront with everybody. If we don't have everybody in the room for that discussion, it's not fair, and we can't move forward. And I hold myself accountable for this as well. So I don't know what else anybody has to add, if anything, or if there's a motion. Yes, Darcy?
I'll make a motion based on the appearances of impropriety and shall refrain from abusive conduct portions. I make a motion that we find a violation of section 1.03.069 conduct of the city officials and employees as sustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Shaman.
A second.
Tony seconds. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? That's all in favor and none opposed. Thank you. Number 4, political advocacy. A, city officials and employees shall not utilize the city's name or logo for purposes of endorsing any political candidate or business. City employees shall not engage in electioneering while on the job. Electioneering means working for the election of a candidate to political office. City employees. Okay. City employees shall not be appointed or retained on the basis of their political support or activities. Employees, this is all about employees.
So it
Should I
says
continue?
city officials and employees. Can we assume that when it says city employees, it's taking in that whole term?
So
Yeah.
the only portion of this section that pertains to city officials is the first portion.
Okay, so I can stop reading the rest.
First
So-
sentence of the
First
first.
sentence of the first portion.
Right.
That's
Then let
it.
me please restate that for everybody. City officials and employees shall not utilize the city's name or logo for purposes of endorsing any political candidate or business. Period. Okay, Councilmember Russ.
Okay, with further clarification from Dan, but the reason I felt at the time violated that section on the audio electioneering while on the job, and while another city employee was on the job. She discussed her campaign with the city secretary, if signs had been ordered, discussed her opponent and sign placement while she utilized public resources.
Okay. Given the clarification on the applicable part of the
Yes,
code.
if Jill's 1 minute 11 seconds in that conversation is a misuse of city's resources, then so be it. We were in a discussion about the campaign, some signs had gone missing. I asked if we had more signs, and electioneering is actually trying to persuade someone to vote. It's not, if you think it's electioneering, please take it to the Secretary of State. Let's just get on with this.
I believe with clarification from council that only that first sentence of part A applies. Is there any real further discussion, or do we have a motion, Darcy?
I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I'd like to make a motion that we find that a violation of section 1.03.075 political advocacy as unsustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Sherman.
I'll second. Any further discussion? All in favor? 4 in favor? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, any opposed? So no vote?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No
I
vote?
was reading on.
Are you for or against the motion?
I'm
To
for it.
unsustain?
I'm with it,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you for clarification. Number 5, section 103076, confidential information. City officials and employees shall respect the confidentiality of information concerning city property, personnel, or proceedings of the city. They shall neither disclose confidential information without proper legal authorization, nor use such information to advance their personal interests. Councilmember Russ.
I believe Suzanne violated this by discussing the city employees in the presence of another employee, Jill Shelton, and Councilman Don Clark.
Mayor Shawman, any response?
Well, since Jill is the HR director, the discussion of employees goes on all the time with Jill around. And Councilman Clark would also be voting should this come to pass, and I don't think there's anything wrong with me talking to one council person.
Okay, is there any other comment about this one? Yes, Darcy?
Echo what Mayor Sherman said, Jill's HR director, and Don was a councilman at the time, so was Councilman Russ, and I think it's well within the scope for those things to be discussed in their presence, as it would be for myself and the mayor and Jill to discuss those things now. So I don't think that there's any thing wrong with that discussion.
Any other comment? Yes, Tony?
Getting my thought together here. So although I understand and agree with Darcy to some extent, if it was a personnel matter that they were actually discussing like seriously and had a meeting on it, then they probably wouldn't have been recording it. And it wouldn't have led into, and it didn't seem like a very constructive HR personnel comments. And it's not confidential now. Because it's all open.
Yeah.
Everything they said is open. So I guess was struggling with the wording, and that's what, but those were my thoughts, and I'm kind of mapping them back to the words.
Okay, are you through?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
thank
so my confusion with this part is the relevancy of confidential information. Confidential information is specific information, not any information. And I'm kind of looking to you, Dan, for clarification. If Jill had read out my social security number, that would be confidential information. Frankly, the information about my daughter and her medical status, that was confidential information. But not everything is confidential information. Am I correct
That's
in that?
correct.
Okay, so I didn't hear any sensitive confidential information being
So,
discussed
if I
in
could-
an appropriate way.
Okay, I'll try to, I don't know if this will bring clarity or not, but as you all know, as members of the city council, every one of you has absolute access to any any information up here, even if the public does not, right? Any of you can come up here and ask for any personnel file at any time you want to. However, there are still things within that personnel file that would be withheld from you if it's confidential by law, for example. Social security number is a great example. Now, I think the purpose of this provision in your code of ethics is so that information you're privy to as a city council member or as an employee, that you will not share that outside the proper context. It is confidential information, should remain confidential. Information that you have access to as a member of council, you should not use for your personal interest. For example, if you find out about something as a council member that there's this big project coming, and we don't want you running out and buying up all the property around where that project's going to be coming to, right? That would be improper. That would be a misuse of confidential information that you only had access to as a member of council. The same thing pertains to employees though, right? And so it's up to you whether or not you believe what you heard on there constitutes a misuse of information that was available only to these people because of their positions.
Does anyone have further comment on item 5? Motion, Darcy.
I'd like to make a motion that we find a violation of section 1.03.076 as unsustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Shaman.
Second. Any further comment? All in favor? 4 in favor and Councilmember Russ opposed. Number 6, section 103077, use of public resources. City officials and employees shall not use public resources generally unavailable to the public, such as city staff, time, equipment, supplies, or facilities for private gain or personal purposes. Councilmember Russ.
Suzanne violated this section in audio recording at City Hall by using the city secretary's time and the city's facility, City Hall, to discuss her personal election campaign.
Do you have anything further on this?
As I've said, you've all heard the recording.
Any comment? Yes?
So I know that Mayor Shaman said it was 1 minute and 11 seconds. I calculated it myself. I found it to be a little bit longer at 1 minute and 25 seconds. I take numerous bathroom breaks every day at work, and my county judge doesn't get mad at me for that, I don't think. So 1 minute and 25 seconds, I don't find it to be egregious. Should we be talking at length? Even if it was 20 minutes, I might be upset about it. But for 1 minute and 25 seconds to ask about signs, or if one had been placed or was missing at a certain spot, I'm sorry, I just don't find that egregious. In this context, in this section, use of public resources, when we're talking about using 1 minute and 25 seconds of the city secretary's time, that probably equates to 3 cents of city's money, maybe, if she wasn't on break.
Okay. Councilmember Russ.
There's not anything in our codes that state it's okay to do it for 5 seconds or 5 minutes or 50 minutes. It's not to be done, period. And that's the way I read this. I
Okay.
don't think there should be any exceptions to that because it leads into much more than that. I mean, who's to say that $1.25, that's coming out of my pocket too as a taxpayer. I think any penny that's wasted and misused, that's the biggest thing. That's helping yourself to public resources. And I can't tolerate 5 seconds of it.
But how much time have we spent with the attorney to write these complaints?
Okay, instead of the back and forth though, I get your point. I wanna know if you're wrapped up with your,
Yeah.
okay. Do you wanna elaborate further?
No, I think I've said.
Okay, do you wanna comment?
I do. I would agree that it shouldn't be happening at this office at all. However, in this context of the meeting where it was a private meeting and Don Clark very much made it a personal, he steered the conversation differently, and I can't even imagine what would have happened had they, not finished the conversation with him. So, and we don't have any proof of how often it happened, and so the 1 minute and 25 seconds, we don't have a recording of 24/7 around here. So that part of it is not what I'm focusing on. The spirit of it, it was clearly Don brought up the election. The conversation went way too long. But I don't know in my heart of hearts that they would have been the ones, if they would have been the ones bringing it up, I might be thinking totally differently, because he's the one that brought it up. And they just respectfully entertained the conversation. And so I'm struggling with that as well, so, all right, thank you.
Can I speak to something though, just
Please.
very briefly? So, I'm doing my job. I'm not working for Councilman Russ. I represent the entity. I'm gonna prepare the complaint. I worked with Jill when she brought her complaint. That's what we do. So I would hope that's not seen as abuse of public resources, because I don't represent any of y'all. I represent the entity. So I just wanna clarify that he contacted me because the person that would normally handle it was the subject of the complaint, and so was the mayor. So he had to contact me and the mayor pro tem, and that's the process.
Well, and I'd like to clarify my comment,
Yes.
if I can, since he clarified. The only reason for my comment is because over and over again in both of these complaints, we're seeing the same thing. And that to me is abuse of tax dollars, because we're having to pay the law firm to look into stuff when I find that much of this is, I really don't wanna use the word bogus, cause I don't think that it's bogus, but it's the same charge over and over. I mean, it's copied and pasted. And I mean, even as we saw in several of, at least one of these, it doesn't even make sense to be in the complaint. So we're wasting time, which is taxpayer money, and then here we are complaining about something that may have cost 2 cents. And so that's where, if we're gonna talk about wasting taxpayer money, how long have I been sitting here? And I spent hours listening to the audio recording. I've spent hours poring over this, as have the rest of the council, which doesn't cost the city money, and I'm glad to do it because it's what I ran for, but it's aggravating, and it's for what? And so, I'm sorry that, if that comment offends you or makes you mad, but it's true and it's frustrating, and it's a waste of money.
I didn't raise my hand, but I was waiting to speak, so I'm gonna go ahead and make my comment. In my opinion, on this specific complaint, and I'll speak directly to you, Councilmember Russ, if I walk into Jill's office, or the mayor's office, sorry, since this is actually about you, and I pause to ask you how your day is going, or how the weather's doing, now, or no, I guess it would be Jill, because this is about Suzanne violating use of, okay. So I stopped Jill from what she's doing to ask her something personal, because for my personal purposes, it makes me feel better as a human to make sure that she's having a good day, and then you're gonna file if it's 5 seconds of time, then that's too much of the taxpayers' dollars, I think is a real stretch of the intent. It's not like, Jill is dedicating hours or doing something on Suzanne's behalf or being asked to. I think this is a tremendous stretch and a waste to discuss any further, in my opinion. Is there any further comment?
I'd like to make a motion if I can.
Please.
I'd like to make a motion that we find a violation of section 1.03.077, use of public resources, as unsustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Shaw.
I second it.
Seconded by Christine. Any further comment? All in favor? 4 in favor, and Jerry, 1 opposed. Number 7, section 103080, policy role of city officials and employees. City officials and employees shall respect and adhere to the Bandera city governmental structure as outlined in state law, the city's policies and procedures in the structure. The city council determines the policies of the city with its advice, information, and analysis provided by the public, boards, commissions, and committees, and city staff. Except as provided by the city ordinance, city officials therefore shall not interfere with the administrative functions of the city or the professional duties of the city staff, nor shall they impair the ability of staff to implement council policy decisions. Councilmember Russ.
I believe she violated this section by interfering with the administrative function of the city and the duties of the city staff by using the city secretary's time to discuss Suzanne's personal election campaign in the audio recording.
Yes,
I believe this is pretty much the same topic that we just went over.
do you have, is there any further discussion?
I renew everything I just said.
Any motion? Yes,
I'd like to make a motion.
yes.
I make a motion that we find in violation section 1.03.080 policy role of city officials and employees as unsustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Shum.
A second.
Second by Christine. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, 4 in favor and opposed, Jerry opposed. Number 8, section 103082, positive workplace environment. City officials shall support the maintenance of a positive and constructive workplace environment for city employees and for citizens and businesses dealing with the city. City officials shall recognize their special role in dealing with city employees and refrain from creating the perception of inappropriate direction to staff.
Suzanne violated this section in the way she dealt with city employees on 10/8 in the audio recording discussing her personal election campaign. One specific example is when she asked Jill Shelton if her election signs had been ordered while Jill was on duty at City Hall. Another example I referred to in the time, but we didn't actually listen to it.
Okay, any further discussion?
I have a-
Sorry, did you have a rebuttal? Yes, go ahead, Darcy.
I have a couple of things. Did you wanna hire me as your attorney, Mayor?
Will I what?
Do you wanna hire me as your attorney? I have a couple of things. One, I wanted to know if I may ask Jill a question, if she's
Please.
willing to. One of the things here, Jill, is, that there be a positive work environment. And I just wanted to ask you if you felt at any time that the mayor created in that circumstance anything other than, now this is the mayor creating anything other than a positive work environment for
I
you.
got you.
Object.
That's part of it.
There's a conflict of interest there. So
I allowed it. I gave her, I allowed
Well,
it. And we're allowed
I'm just
additional
objecting.
testimony.
And then, I renew what I said about the minute in 25 seconds, and then also, I went back a few times to, 48 minutes and 28 seconds on the recording, and the mayor was in no way involved in any conversation at 48 minutes and 28 seconds. So, I don't know what you're referring to at that point in the recording,
Okay.
that's all I have.
Do you have
No
any
comment.
comment about what
No,
you're referring
no
to?
comment.
Okay. Any further comment on this, as this ordinance is related to the complaint specified here? No? Any motion? Darcy?
I'd like to make a motion that we find in regards to a violation of section 1.03.083 implementation as unsustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Shulman.
We're on the one before that.
Oh, I'm sorry, as section, I made.
Positive workplace environment.
Yes, section
Number 8.
1.03.082 positive workplace environment.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Second.
Second by Christine. Further discussion. All in favor? Yeah. Okay. 4 in favor and opposed. Jerry's opposed. Number 9, implementation. Sorry, let me go back and read the code. It's section 103083 implementation. As an expression of the standards of conduct for city officials and employees expressed by the city, the Bandera Code of Ethics and Conduct is intended to be self-enforcing. It therefore becomes most effective when city officials and employees are thoroughly familiar with it and embrace its provisions. B. Ethical standards shall be included in the regular orientations for candidates for city council, applications to boards, commissions and committees, and newly elected, appointed officials, and new employees. C. City officials and employees entering the office, maybe, including those appointed to boards, commissions, and committees, shall sign a statement affirming they have read and understood the City of Bandera Code of Ethics and Conduct. In addition, the Code of Ethics and Conduct shall be reviewed periodically by the council, boards, commissions, and committees, and the City Council shall consider recommendations from boards, commissions, committees, employees, and citizens for revision as it becomes necessary. Councilmember Russ.
I believe Suzanne violated A and C, not B, of this section by not self-enforcing an audio recording on 10/8. She signed a statement. She says she didn't, but she signed a statement that she had read and understood the Code of Ethics and Conduct, and had just recently been through a training, yet violated sections of the ordinance.
Again, I don't think anybody has read ordinance 361 from beginning to end, every word, and knows everything that's in it, and that's why some of this stuff in the later complaint is coming up. And I have not read every word of ordinance 361, and I have not signed the statement, and neither has anyone else at this table that I can find, that I know of. If you have, then please bring it forward. I'm just saying, I haven't. I'm done.
Okay. Darcy?
So as I read and interpret this for myself, I don't think that it can be violated by the mayor unless she refused to attend any trainings that she was told that she had to go to, or that she refused to sign the statements. It doesn't say anywhere in A or C that she actually has to follow the code of ethics. That's, what we went through all of this is, the actual code of ethics. That's not what this section is saying. And then C is telling us what we can actually do. So, this isn't something that can actually be violated unless she just absolutely refused to attend a training that is mandatory, or she refused to sign a document for said training.
Any further comment? I would just agree that I'm just not in agreement with Councilmember Russ's interpretation on many of these, and this one included. Yes.
I just want to make a point of the rebuttal. It doesn't, it has to do with this. I find it disturbing that this was implemented in March of last year, and you haven't read all of it. It was implemented under your watch. So, and so I guess I'm asking. Can I ask Darcy a question? Was she?
Yeah.
Because the part about is intended to be self-enforcing. So
Yeah.
what is it about that doesn't mean implementation of the?
Well, if it's self-enforcing, that doesn't mean you have to do it. It's intended to be self-enforcing. Therefore, it's most effective when city officials when it's embraced its provisions. It's not saying you have to follow this. We're actually, all of this that we're doing, we're looking at the code of ethics, and that's what we're finding that she's either violating or not violating. This isn't something, this section isn't actually something that she can violate as a whole,
Okay.
is what it's saying.
I understand what you mean. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm hearing your argument, and I don't think it's fair to say that we read through this when it was adopted. We read through it as a council, and it was adopted as a council. So it's not that it's completely unfamiliar. It's possible that this section of it could be tightened up for all of us and all the boards and commissions, and we get things on file. And that's reasonable to ask of everybody here. So I would entertain a motion. Yes, Darcy?
I'd like to make a motion that we find, when it comes to violation of section 1.03.083 implementation, we find it as unsustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Shannon.
Second by Christine. Any further discussion? No. All in favor? Okay, we've got the 4 in favor and Jerry opposed. Unsustained. Number 10. Section 103.084, Compliance and Enforcement. A. The Bandera Code of Ethics and Conduct expresses standards of ethical conduct expected for city officials and employees of the Bandera City Council, boards, commissions, and committees. B, city officials and employees themselves have the primary responsibility to assure that ethical standards are understood and met, and that the public can continue to have full confidence in the integrity of government. C, the chairs of boards, commissioners, and committees, and the mayor shall have the additional responsibility to intervene when city officials' actions appear to be in violation of the Code of Ethics and Conduct and are brought to their attention. D, the city council may impose sanctions such as reprimand, formal censure, or loss of committee assignments on city officials whose conduct does not comply with the city's ethical standards. The city council also may act to remove members of boards, commissions, and committees from office. Councilmember Russ.
I believe Suzanne violated this section. She is the mayor of the city, and it's primary responsibility to assure that ethical standards are met, yet she violated ordinances as described above. She also made mention of assassination while at City Hall. Regardless of who she was referring to as mayor, nowhere, and especially in the hallways of City Hall, that this should be acceptable. She can be heard on the 10-8 audio recording asking Councilman Don Clark how he feels about assassination. And B, Jill Shelton asked Don Clark if he was going to support the mayor in the election, and the mayor did not intervene in that violation.
Anything further?
Nothing to say.
Yes.
I will say that, the mayor did say that she mentioned, assassination. I do think that, it was a joke and that it was in regard to people taking her signs. It wasn't in regards to anybody specific necessarily. I know because I was running for office myself and people kept either completely taking my signs or they were taking my signs down. It was incredibly frustrating and those signs are not cheap. However, talking about assassination in any way is not okay. Especially not up here and especially not when the public is to have confidence in us and our positions. And so based on that and on B, I personally will be voting to sustain this violation.
So I'd like to just, sorry, did anybody have their hands up? I was looking down. Never mind. I'm just gonna leave it. I don't have any really further comment.
We have a lot of duplicates, and so I have a lot of old comments that kind of apply here, so I'll vote accordingly.
Okay, sorry. Entertain a motion. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we find when it comes to violation of section 1.03.084, compliance and enforcement, we find as sustained with regard to Mayor Suzanne Shelton.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Christine seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, we have Christine, Russ, Hasty, Coons in favor, and I am opposed. Sustained. So that is the end of the complaint portion of this order, and on part 2, states the city, there's some fill in the blanks here. The city council of the city of Bandera, based on foregoing finding, does blank, does or does not hereby reprimand Susan Schumann for the allegations in the complaint filed by Councilmember Roos, and does hereby order as follows. Did you have your hand up?
Do y'all want me to leave? Y'all want
You opted to have this in public, so we're in
Yeah.
public. If they wanna go into closed session to consult with attorney, they
that's up
can,
to y'all.
otherwise it's all in open session, so.
So,
with
yeah, go
that,
ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can impose sanctions such as reprimand, formal censure, or loss of any kind of committee assignment. I mean, that's what it's limited to. Or if there's something else that you deem as appropriate as a sanction.
I would just offer a comment, and this really just reiterates my statement from earlier, and I promise you too, I'm holding myself to the same standard of just trying to do better, to do good work, and really to not talk crap about people.
Yes, ma'am.
That's just for me. I think that that's the biggest piece for me coming from all of this is just to really be authentic in this work and to work with people and to have those conversations with them to hope for best outcome for the city of Bandera. And so, anybody else have anything in conclusion? Yes?
I would just like to say that, I agree, and we are held to a higher standard as, holding offices as public officials, and, looking back at my paperwork and keeping track of what we did sustain, we sustained on 2 items, and one was the conduct of city officials and employees, and that was, the talking crap one, and the other was the assassination. And so both were, the conversational things that, we don't agree with, and we all agreed on that. And I think so we have to take that into consideration for what it is. And then also half jokingly, I definitely wanna say that I don't wanna take you off a committee, because that's a punishment in and of itself. You're still stuck on EDC, so.
Well, actually, as I've said, I'll abide by whatever y'all decide to do, and you're right. I get angry sometimes, and I don't really think about what I say, and obviously that was a heated discussion. And where the word assassination came from, I honestly just don't know. I was tired by that time. I'd already left the meeting. We were out here almost in this room, and I will make an effort, and I will do for sure, because you brought it definitely to my attention, and that's all I can do.
I think it was brought to all of our attention.
Sure.
Checked us, definitely I will admit being checked too, because, I get heated. Y'all have all been around it.
Okay. So if I'm correct, Dan, we need a motion to either does or does not hereby reprimand.
Well, so, yes, and, what that is whatever you decide. If this is sufficient, if you believe this is a verbal reprimand in this setting, that you've called this conduct to the mayor's attention and said whatever you need to say, then that's the end of it. If there's other steps that you want taken, or if there's any additional things that you want, then we would need to write something further in there. Otherwise, when you give this back to me and I finish it up and get it back to you tomorrow, it will say that the sanction was a verbal reprimand in the public hearing, is what it'll end up saying.
Okay. Does anyone have anything further? Yes.
I think the verbal reprimand in a public hearing is sufficient for me. She's been smacked on the hand pretty hard in the public, and that to me that's more than would be enough for me. I can say that would be pretty hard for me, so.
So in the form of a motion then for this, or
Yes,
is that
yeah.
sufficient? Okay.
Yes, if that's what the entire council agrees upon, then your motion be, you move to accept this order with the sustaining of the 2 that y'all with a verbal reprimand as the sanction.
Okay, I'll make a shot at a motion.
Thank you.
The City Council of the City of Bandera, based on the foregoing findings, does hereby reprimand Mayor Suzanne Shaman for the allegations in the complaint filed by Councilmember Russ, and does hereby order as follows.
But that's not necessary. So if it's just a verbal reprimand, then
Oh,
that's the first part of your motion. So
that's it?
yeah.
So, okay, that's all of my motion.
Could I ask you to clarify, the sustained?
Okay, so that's where I said, and sorry, I did have a second, so did I not, so I'm discussing this, based upon the foregoing findings. So Dan, am I right
Yeah,
that,
you
so
found-
that means that
Found a
what,
violation of two different sections.
but do I need to restate that, or is that already, it's
written-
documented,
yeah,
it
it's in
was
the
voted
document.
on in the
Okay,
meeting,
cool.
and,
Thank you.
okay, are we, that's good, okay.
Mary, you'll get a copy of the document.
Okay, so, any further
69 and 84.
discussion?
69 and 84.
Say again?
69 and 84.
What is that?
The the sections or the.
Oh, I wasn't
The numbers.
asking. Any further discussion?
What did I get to?
Say again?
69 and 84.
All in favor? Okay, all in favor and none opposed. I'd like to call a recess. Can we take a 10? It's 9:16 and I'm reconvening this regular meeting of the Bandera City Council. Item 7, closed session. The City Council will meet in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 551074 personnel to hear a complaint or charge against City Secretary Jill Shelton, to wit, violations of the City of Bandera Code of Ordinances, Section 103065, Statement of Purpose, Section 103067, Act in the Public Interest, Section 103068, Comply with the Law, Section 103069, Conduct of City Officials and Employees, Section 103073, Conflicts of Interest and Disclosure, Section 103075, Political Advocacy, Section 103076, Confidential Information, Section 103077, Use of Public Resources, Section 103078, Representation of Private Interests, Section 103080, Policy Role of City Officials and Employees, Section 103083, Implementation, Section 103084, Compliance and Enforcement, and Section 103039, Agenda Officer. City Secretary Jill Sheldon may request said discussion be held as a public hearing. City Secretary, your preference?
I'll have it in open session as well.
Okay, so we will remain in open session. And Councilmember Russ, to your complaints, do you have an opening statement?
No, it's the same as before.
Okay, Jill, do you have an opening statement on or a rebuttal?
I did prepare a 2-page document, that I was prepared to read, kind of outline all of it in one, but I'm not sure that I wanna do that now because of the way it's going, you know, how we're going down each one individually. I would like to say though that, whether it is or it is not, I feel like this is all very obviously retaliatory moves by Mr. Russ to me, and that the formal complaint that I filed against him had nothing to do with that recording on October 8th, that it was the behavior of Mr. Russ prior to that meeting, and that since Mr. Russ was reprimanded and giving that order on October 15th, he has violated that order himself by statements he made about me in the newspaper, attacking my character verbally, and different things that he accused me of in that newspaper article, which I have printed to give you all tonight. It is clear that he is abusive conduct against my character in the newspaper article where he made very permanent statements accusing me of certain things, and I've got that prepared. In addition to his verbal attack in the paper, since my complaint against him in October, I've been interviewed by a Texas Ranger, I've had 25 open records requests between him and his wife in a 13-day period following that complaint. There's been Open Meetings Act violations filed with the Marshal's Department that were unsustained. And then finally tonight, I am here before you again with 13 ethics violations and 7 personnel manual violations. Yet, I was told I would not be retaliated against. It's unfortunate that this is what happens when someone stands their ground for something that they think is wrong. As far as the individual accusations are concerned, I took the time to address each one, and I'd be more than happy to do that, but I would like to say of the 13 original violations, 6 of those are election related. I personally did speak to the Elections Department of the Secretary of State and get advice, as well as my own personal attorney, because Dan does not represent me. And they did not feel like in that total of 56 minutes and 49-second conversation that was recorded, and believe me, me more than anyone wishes it wasn't, that 1 minute and 11 seconds, which was composed of 6 seconds, 13 seconds, and 50 seconds or something, that in any way was I electioneering or violated any kind of election law. And had that been the case, Mr. Russ could have filed a complaint on me with the Secretary of State. 2 of the complaints, and that's where, so I'll start there. So that was violation 2, 3, 6, 8, 9, and 10, all have to do with election on that section, the first section. The other complaints for the personnel manual I did not get till Monday of this week. And I believe 5 of those, and that's later in my letter so we can get to that, had to do with election as well. So the majority of them did have to do with election. 2 and 7 had to do with discussing city employees. The recorded meeting was called by Jerry Russ to discuss adding an agenda item. He brought former member Council Clark, unbeknownst to the mayor or I, to try to force something on the agenda. This led into conversation about another employee and an investigation that was done. It's not uncommon for personnel investigations or employee appeals to be discussed by council members. So I personally feel like these violations are irrelevant. Violation 4 is regarding a comment I made to former council member about Councilmember Russ and his behavior then and in the past, and I stand by that comment. So I won't take that back. Violation 5 is false, in my opinion. I didn't disclose my complaint against Mr. Russ. I did disclose it to the city administrator. The city administrator and I had a lengthy call with the attorney, and we also, the city administrators who sent him the complaint. So I don't know if you want me to go through each one or if you want to wait till we get to that section. And then I just have a closing statement after that, so.
I would like to hear them as they apply to
Okay.
each complaint, for me personally. And if you would prefer to read your closing statement now, or wait till we're
I'll wait
finished
till the
going
end,
through?
thank
Okay. And to clarify, Dan, in the order contains the complaints related to the code of ethics and to the personnel, is that
So,
correct?
It's the same factual basis, but I did
But it's
not
all in one?
add, that's right, no, I did not add separately in there any personnel things. It is just the code of ethics.
Okay,
Those were received Sunday, or I got to them Sunday.
Okay.
I'm not saying that's when Councilman Russ sent them, I was not where I had access to emails and stuff. So I've not put those in the order, but the underlying facts are the same on all of these things. It's just that in addition to an assertion that they violate the code of ethics, there's also an assertion that they violate the personnel policy.
okay.
Because Jill Shelton is an employee.
Yeah, Tony?
But they're duplicate violations, it's just personnel because she's an
It was-
employee and
That's correct.
code of ethics, but it's not
That's-
separate, they're not,
It's
okay.
not separate factual
That's kinda what I got when I
basis
read
that
through it,
could
but,
see.
Okay. I asked
Cause I was confused by that, I'm sorry.
because I wanted to know if I should just begin with the order,
I
which,
think that's the easiest way
I
to
will
do
do.
that, and
Okay.
then if there's additional things that Councilman Russ believes need to be addressed that are maybe only in the employee handbook, then we could do so. So yeah, it's a little bit different in that respect.
may I just ask then, would we do that during agenda item 9 or no? Since they're not in the order.
No, that's just set salaries for the.
Oh, I'm
fixed
so
employees.
sorry, I misread something, I'll go. Okay, the order. An order of the City Council of the City of Bandera, Texas pursuant to Chapter 1, Article 103, Division 3, Code of Ethics, Section 103271, making any findings and issuing any reprimands necessary to City Secretary Jill Shelton for violations of the Code of Ethics and Conduct for city official and employees. Part 1, findings upon the allegations. Number 1, Section 103065, Statement of Purpose. The citizens and businesses of Bandera are entitled to have fair, ethical, and accountable local government which earns the public's full confidence for integrity. The strong desire for the City of Bandera to fulfill this expectation therefore requires that city officials, both elected and appointed, and employees comply with both the letter and spirit of the laws and policies affecting the operations of government, be independent, impartial, and fair in their judgment and actions. The office or positions to be used for the public good, not for personal gain, and to this end, the Bandera City Council has adopted this code of ethics and conduct for city officials and employees to assure public confidence in the integrity of local government and its effective and fair operation. Councilmember Russ.
I believe Jill violated this section by openly discussing other city employees while at City Hall with the mayor and Councilmember Don Clark on an audio recording on 10A. Discussion of city employees and that they should be fired was discussed, which wasn't impartial or fair,
Okay, I'm
based
gonna,
upon partly the fact that they couldn't be there to defend themselves.
okay, and City Secretary, Jill, do you have a comment on that specific allegation? Number
Well,
1?
I would like to say that, it wasn't just Don who was discussing other employees, it was Mr. Russ also, so he should be listed on this, cause he was part of discussing, certain employees prior to him leaving the room. But with that said, I didn't call the meeting. I was in the meeting because I was asked to be there, and, I didn't bring up the employees. They were brought up due to an investigation that had already been done, so I really have no other comment on that violation or number 7, so.
Yes, Darcy.
Jill's the HR director, it's part of her job to discuss this along with the mayor and city council members. So I don't believe there's a violation here.
Is there any other comment? Okay, is there a motion to sustain or not? Yes, Darcy.
I'd like to make a motion, if I may, that we find as it comes to a violation of section 1.03.065, statement of purpose as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Shelton.
Second.
Okay, I'll let Tony seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, 4 in favor and opposed, 1. Number 2, section 103067, act in the public interest. Recognizing that stewardship of the public interest must be their primary concern, city officials and employees will work for the common good of the people of Bandera and not for private or personal interests. And they will assure fair and equal treatment of all persons, claims, and transactions coming before the Bandera City Council, boards, commissions, and committees. Councilmember Russ.
Jill violated this section by discussing her personal interest in the mayor's election campaign while on duty at City Hall with the mayor and Councilman Don Clark. on 10/8 in the audio recording.
Do you have a rebuttal?
Same response, 2, 3, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 6 of the 7 have to do with election, and I do, like I said, I contacted who I need to contact, and I don't feel like there's any.
I have a comment, and that is, I completely disagree that the allegation applies to this code. Personal interest, and equal treatment of all persons, claims, and transactions coming before the Bandera City Council, it feels to me, again, like a tremendous stretch to try to apply your interpretation of this recorded conversation to fit as a violation to this section of the Code of Ethics, in my opinion. Any other comments or motion? Darcy will make a motion.
Well, I have
Oh,
a
I'm
comment.
sorry, I didn't see you.
This is not going by state laws or any of that. This is actually in our own code of ethics concerning electioneering. So there's not really an interpretation involved there. It seems to me very clear and blatant.
Yes, Tony.
I know we're like in a different session here, but as stated previously, I'll just put it on the record here that the Secretary of State is the one that really governs the election laws, and if there was a violation, we should be filing it with them, and if they have a finding, then we should review it and then decide if we want to take action or sanction based on our own personal code of ethics. But I feel as though electioneering, I'm sure they have a lot more cases to review and precedents to know whether or not there was a violation, and she spoke to it and it hadn't been filed. I mean, she spoke to them and it hasn't been filed, so I would disagree with the allegation as well.
Darcy?
He was first, sorry.
I didn't see, sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed that part.
That last part I said, so I would disagree.
About not being filed with the secretary.
So what we talked about earlier is that the Secretary of State is the one that upholds the election laws, and they're the ones that we refer to it from our code of conduct. We refer to those specific laws, and if they're the ones that she spoke to them, of course, I'm taking her word for it. But even in Suzanne, she didn't say she spoke to it. But we all said that if it was an election violation, that it should be filed with them, and if they have a finding, that it could come back to us, and we might do something on top of that.
But we have our own, we're not going to the state for this. That's why we have it wrote in our own policy and procedures and our code of ethics.
Okay, but
It has nothing to do with the Secretary of State.
this.
These are our own rules.
Okay, I'm gonna take the floor. This specific rule, act in the public interest, that I'm reading, that's right here, about stewardship, public interest, not acting on your own personal behalf, and fair and equal treatment of all persons and claims and transactions coming before the city council. I fail to see the relevance of what you're saying here, or that her personal interest from your own quote is even, what are you alleging as the personal interest?
Her campaigning for the mayor, wanted to make sure that she got elected.
Okay, I disagree.
Well, you asked, and that's what I told you.
Yeah, okay. Personal interest is defined in law, is it not?
So I think it's self-defining.
Okay.
Right? I mean, there's not a legal definition as what is a personal interest versus
Okay.
a public interest. It's self-defining.
Christine, did you
No.
have your hand up?
No, I was just saying he needed to go.
Oh,
He was
okay.
up before her, that was all.
Okay.
I
And
have a
Darcy
comment
has-
and a motion if.
Yep, go right ahead with both.
So I wasn't gonna comment because I thought we had enough, but I'll even take a different spin on it. I believe fair and equal treatment has been shown. I don't think Jill shows anybody any different treatment. I've never seen her treat anybody any different. And yeah, she does seem to have a personal interest. I mean, she probably prefers soccer or football over the other, don't we all? And when it comes to an election, that's why you get to choose who you want to vote for. So we all have a personal interest when it comes to whatever. So it's not, there's nothing wrong with having a personal interest. She didn't force her personal interest on anyone. That's what this is saying we can't do. If I come in this office and if Laura was still working here and I said, Laura, you've got to vote for me. If you don't vote for me, I'm gonna find out because I know people in the elections office and it's gonna be bad for you. That's a problem. She didn't do anything like that. And Jill doesn't appear to be, appear to be unfair in her overall treatment of any candidate. I haven't heard that she was unfair to Tony. She wasn't unfair to me. I'm sure I got the same packet Tony got, or that Andrea got, or that Miss Coffee got. So I don't see where this is an issue, so.
Jerry.
But this was done while she was on duty, and that is specific to our code of ethics. That is not to be conducted while you're on duty. Outside of it, you can do and say whatever you want, but while you're at work, totally prohibited. And it doesn't say how long you need to talk about something and how much you need to use our personal resources or the city resources. It just states plainly, any use. No limitations on it.
Okay, yes, Darcy.
Not in this section. I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion that we find as it comes to a violation of section 1.03.067, act in the public interest, as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Sheldon.
I'll second.
second by Christine. Any further discussion? All in favor? Christine, Darcy, Tony, Rebecca. Opposed? Jerry. Number 3, section 103068, comply with the law. City officials and employees shall comply with the laws of the nation, the state of Texas, and the city of Bandera in the performance of their public duties. These laws include, but are not limited to, the United States and Texas constitutions, laws pertaining to conflicts of interest, election campaigns, financial disclosures, employer responsibilities, and open processes of government, and city ordinances and policies. Mr. Russ.
I believe Jill violated this section by discussing the mayor's election campaign while on duty and at City Hall in the 10-8 recording in reference to above the election campaigns.
I'm gonna go ahead and speak for myself, and this is just gonna apply to, for me, for everything related to the election. As I stated in the last agenda item, the city secretary is not the individual in the meeting that originally brought up the election. It was repeatedly brought up. The statement about wanting to help Mayor Shulman become reelected was repeatedly brought up by the council member, the former council member who was present. And yeah, I heard you ask the question, Jill, so are you supporting Suzanne? Which kind of, I don't even know why you asked that, because he had said it like 5 times already, so it wasn't, I just feel, in my opinion, that this is an incredible stretch, and like you're just trying so hard to find something wrong with something that was very innocent, and it wasn't even initiated by the city secretary. That's how I feel about it, and yes,
I'd like to make a motion.
please.
I'd like to make a motion that we find as it comes to violation of section 1.03.068, comply with the law as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Sheldon.
I'll second.
Second by Christine. Those in favor?
Sorry.
Tony, Christine, Rebecca, Darcy, and opposed, Jerry. Number 4, section 103069, conduct of city officials and employees. The professional and personal conduct of city officials and employees must be above reproach and avoid even the appearance of impropriety. City officials and employees shall refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks upon the character or motives of other city officials and employees, board, commission, and committee members, and the public. Mr. Russ.
I believe Jill violated this section on 10-8 in the audio recording at City Hall by verbally attacking myself and my character, along with other city employees. Jill states at 31:13 of the recording that I brutalize everybody, I'm rude, mean, and aggressive. She also states that I'm demanding, arrogant, and vulgar to everybody. Quite a stretch. She also talked negatively about previous council member Glenn Clark and employee Martin Parks.
Okay. City Secretary Jill, do you have anything to add to that statement or comment about?
I did make statements such as that to Don Clark after Mr. Russ left the meeting. Again, that was leading up to that meeting because there had been a heated meeting before that. So, I mean, yeah, I did say those things because that's how I truly feel about him, and I still do now. So, I'm not going to take those back. Again, the comments about the employees, I think we've covered that. You know, I didn't bring this to, I didn't start this meeting and I wasn't there to talk about employees. So the meeting did go that direction, and I am sorry that it did. But I didn't call the meeting, so I won't take back what I've said about him, and I don't know, I have nothing to say.
Okay. Councilmember Russ, you have a comment?
Yeah. I like to know when I was rude, mean, or ever aggressive to any of the employees. And vulgar. I don't use that type of language.
I would like to make a point of
Anyone.
order that
Well, I'm just reiterating.
excuse me, Mr. Russ.
I
Well, I'm interrupting you
Okay.
for a point of order because the discussion is not about anyone justifying their statements about you. It's about the complaint being filed. So it's you asking someone to explain how you're rude is not a part of our discussion here tonight.
Except she still stands by it, so I'd like to hear how she.
I'm sorry,
how
I'm
she
not gonna
still
entertain
stands
it.
by But I wanna make it clear, I have never been rude to anybody, or vulgar especially. I don't use profanity, okay? Whereas vulgar. come
Okay,
in
so I'm not
to
gonna, we're not
employees.
gonna continue for you to
Okay,
defend yourself
go
here.
ahead.
When charges were,
That's
when
fine.
the complaint
Go
was
ahead.
filed against you, you had the opportunity to do that, and at that point you
That's fine.
decided not to. Would anyone else like to comment? Yes.
So when I listened to the recording, I did not find that, Ms. Shelton attacked, Councilman Russ at any point. Now, at 31:13, she did, state that he was rude, mean, aggressive, that he's demeaning, arrogant, and vulgar. I don't know for sure that I heard all of those words, but, in summary, I would say that, yeah, she probably, said most of those things. I do wanna be sure that it's on the record, that it can be considered factual, depending on who you talk to. We heard in the meeting in October that, there were several, witness accounts written by staff members here in the office.
Can I just interrupt you, because I interrupted Mr. Russ on
Sure.
the same thing, like, not to discuss,
Sure.
validating these comments. Just, if we can try to keep it in the context of the complaint, I think it would just be more helpful for the proceeding.
I'll kind of round it to that, and it's, with the fact that he's saying that, you know, she attacked him. I don't feel that, you know, it was attack. Attack would say, you know, if I'm directing something to you, I'm attacking you, I'm hurting your feelings, I'm attacking you. That's not what happened. She was talking to Dawn. about him now. Is that necessarily, the right thing? Should we be talking behind somebody's back about someone? No. But when something can be considered factual, it's not against the law. Now, I've spoken with Mr. Russ at length before, and we even talked about the prior complaint, and he told me himself that he was aggressive and had lost his temper with Jill multiple times, and so he didn't even know.
I object to
Yeah.
that. That was never stated,
what it
and I
was.
don't appreciate
Okay.
this kind of stuff being brought up, because that never occurred.
It did.
Okay.
I have
That's
a
a flat
witness.
out lie.
I have a witness, because you were on speakerphone. Go ahead.
Okay,
Okay.
if
See,
if you have,
that's the problem
excuse
here.
me,
You're
please.
allowing
No, no,
her to
no.
go into things that are totally
I
outside
asked,
the
no,
context of
excuse
this.
me, Mr.
She's
Russ,
not-
please. I did try to redirect the conversation. And if you could wrap up without further discussing,
Sure.
Councilmember Russ's character and just keep it to the facts of the complaint, I think that would be helpful.
Sure, so what it says in the section is that everything should be professional, and that our personal conduct of city officials and employees should be above reproach. And just like we spoke before when it came to Mayor Shaman, that's a pretty high bar to reach. I don't think Jill did anything as close to, what I would consider as egregious as what the mayor did, in my opinion. So personally, I'm not gonna vote to sustain this
Okay.
with her.
Tony?
I felt as though, although the conversation was very similar, I am leaning a different way from the mayor's side because this one piece that, this 1 hour session is what we heard. I don't know what goes on before, after, it doesn't matter. So this is, I'm just using this as a sampling, and what I heard in Jill and her voice and it was exhaustion. And she was tired and frustrated, and Dawn, a former council person, Clark brought up some very specific things, and she was giving examples, and it was in a private office with council people and the mayor, and there was no public involved, there was no employees outside. So although some of the things that were said were very disheartening and very, it explains a lot to me on why things are propagating and continuing. But I don't by any means think that she was totally at fault. And in this particular situation, on 10-8, I do not believe that there was a finding against Jill for this. I'm losing my words. It's exhausted.
That's getting late. I do have comment, I think it's unfortunate, that some of this was stated the way that it was and that kind of comes across the way that it was. I would disagree with Darcy calling someone's opinions factual, because opinions are opinions. And I also disagree that someone cannot be attacked if they're not present. Someone's character can be attacked, and, talking about someone, I don't personally feel like, an attack requires the person's presence to be considered an attack. I would agree, with Tony's, statement though, about the general statements that you made about this specific part in the conversation. And do you have anything to add? Is there any other comment?
I mean, I agree with everything that we've all said, and we've kind of gone around this a bunch of times now.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we should move on.
A motion? Darcy?
I'd like to make a motion that we find as it comes to a violation of section 1.03.068, 1.03.069, conduct of city officials and employees as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Shelton.
Second by Christine. Any further discussion? And all those in favor? Darcy, Tony, Rebecca, Christine, and opposed, Jerry. Number 5, section 103073, conflicts of interest and disclosure. City officials and employees shall familiarize themselves and abide by the following conflicts of interest and disclosure statutes and principles. E, city employees shall disclose potential conflicts of interest to their supervisor and avoid participation in the handling of matters wherein employees have a personal interest. F, in order to assure their independence and impartiality on behalf of the public good, city officials and employees are prohibited from using their positions to influence government decisions in which they have a personal interest. Councilmember Russ.
I believe Jill violated this section E by not disclosing potential conflict of interest with her supervisor, Jay Ori. In her complaint against me, Jay Ori told me he had no idea she was planning that. I have that in a recording. And F, I believe Jill also used her position when she asked Don Clark on the 10-8 audio if he was going to vote for the mayor.
Any comments?
Again, I just think this is more of his retaliatory witch hunt against me, but Mr. Horry was aware of the complaint that I was gonna make that I stated earlier against him. We had a call with the attorney, and the city administrator is who sent Jerry the complaint that I made against him, so he was aware, so I really don't know where he's getting this information from. So, other than that, I have nothing else to say.
Yes,
I
Tony.
know for a fact that Jay Ori was aware of it.
So,
I'm just saying that
Okay.
if, I mean, he's saying that she didn't follow some protocol and let him know, and I don't know where that came from. Is that not what we're?
yeah, so it just seems to me that the complaint here is against Mr. Horry for lying to you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I don't
he
really know.
believed Jay in that, I mean, he wouldn't have,
That
in his
she didn't go through the
defense.
proper chain.
Okay, wait.
I'm sorry.
I wanna take
Go
that.
ahead.
Okay.
In his defense, if I was in his shoes and Jay Ori told me that he knew nothing about it, I would not question him. We are here because he filed a complaint on Jill based on Jay Ori's telling him that he did not know. Right?
But
Is that,
how-
I mean, she didn't follow the chain of command. So he's using the,
Not disclosing potential conflicts of interest. What is
says
the
Jay Ori
conflict
told,
of
Jay Ori
interest?
told me he had no idea.
What is the conflict of interest?
was her bringing the complaints up against me without notifying me. She had a conflict of interest with me.
Oh, now you lost me.
This is conflict of interest with her supervisor, not with.
I don't understand what the actual conflict of interest is.
That's what I don't
though.
understand
I mean, you're
either.
a city councilman, if she doesn't like me, who care, like,
It
that's not a
won't matter
conflict of
too much
interest.
what I say right now. Go ahead and make your motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, Darcy.
Make a motion that we find as it comes to a violation of section 1.03.073 conflicts of interest as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Shelton.
Second. Darcy makes a motion, Christine seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Darcy, Tony, Rebecca, Christine, opposed, Jerry. Number 6. Number 6, section 103075, political advocacy. A, city officials and employees shall not utilize the city's name or logo for purposes of endorsing any political candidate or business. City employees shall not engage in electioneering while on the job. Electioneering means working for the election of a candidate to political office. B, city employees shall not be appointed or retained on the basis of their political support or activities. Employees shall not engage in political activities relating to a campaign for elective office while in uniform or on active duty. Employees elected to city offices shall be required to resign their employment upon acceptance of the office. C, city employees are prohibited from using their municipal title or position in any advertisement or endorsement of products, persons, or activities without exclusive authorization by the city council. Councilmember Russ.
I believe Jill violated this section on 10-8, the audio recording at City Hall by electioneering while on the job. She discussed the mayor's campaign, discussed purchase of the mayor's election signs, discussed the mayor's opponent, and engaged in conversations about sign placement at Don Clark's property. She also asked Don Clark if he was voting for the mayor. So this is mainly in reference to Section B. And employees shall not engage in political activities relating to a campaign for elective office while in uniform or on active duty. And that's really what a lot of this is about.
Okay, any further discussion? Anyone have a motion? And when I say anyone, I mean Darcy.
I make a motion
Yes.
that we find as it comes to violation of section 1.03.075 political advocacy as sustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Sheldon.
Sorry, did you say sustained?
I did.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. I saw Jerry's hand up. Jerry seconds, and any further discussion? I just would argue the same thing that we've said for every item that's come up around elections in the complaint that Jill wasn't the one that initiated any of the conversation. The sum total of her comments were a minute and however many seconds. And I realize Jerry says 0 seconds is all you get. But I just disagree that this is relevant, or relevant enough of a charge to sustain. And that's my comment. Yes, Jerry?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask you, so how long do you need to violate something
I
to
have
make it a
no
violation?
desire to answer your question, nor do I have to.
Oh, you don't have to, but I just would like to know what kind of time limit you put on it.
I personally would
And how
prefer,
much abuse
okay, so
of a violation.
I don't have a time to give you. I would,
Sure.
I'd be happy to say that it's my preference that the conversation doesn't happen at City Hall, but I stand by the fact that I think it's a very insignificant thing, and it wasn't, Jill pursuing this subject, this topic, or pushing to have the conversation. I don't believe she was campaigning. She asked a flippant question that had already been stated as fact by the person
There was a lot more than
repeatedly.
one question involved.
So,
I'd like to withdraw my motion.
motion withdrawn.
You've convinced me.
Okay, so, is there a different motion to entertain?
The second would have to be withdrawn as well.
Is that, Dan, can you clarify
Just
that?
voted it
I think
down.
you have to
You have a motion and a
vote
second,
actually.
you can just vote down your motion.
Yeah, you could just,
It's the same
Okay.
difference.
Yeah, same difference.
Okay.
So, I'll call the vote unless there's further discussion. Okay, all in favor of sustaining? Jerry is in favor. All opposed?
So it's not
Darcy.
sustained.
Tony, Rebecca, and Christine. So is that an
It's
automatic?
unsustained.
Okay, so the section 6 is unsustained.
Well, that was a fun little loop.
You're welcome.
Little
I'm
change,
good. I'm good.
little change there.
wake everybody up.
Number 7, section 103076, confidential information. City officials and employees shall respect the confidentiality of information concerning city property, personnel, or proceedings of the city. They shall neither disclose confidential information without proper legal authorization, nor use such information to advance their personal interests. Councilmember Russ.
I'll just go ahead and rescind this complaint, that specific complaint. Save us a lot of time.
May I ask, Dan, is that sufficient, or do we need to make a motion to, or is it just withdrawn
It's
from the
withdrawn,
order?
it'll
So,
be removed, so if you'll mark through that, and I'll take that out completely when I prepare the final document.
okay, thank you. Number 8, section 103077, use of public resources. City officials and employees shall not use public resources generally unavailable to the public, such as city staff time, equipment, supplies, or facilities for private gain or personal purpose. Councilmember Russ.
Jill violated this section in the 10-8 audio recording at City Hall by using her time and the city's facility to discuss the mayor's personal election campaign.
Anything further? Motion, or, yes, Darcy?
I'd like to make a motion that we
Please.
find as it comes to section 1.03.077, use of public resources as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Shelton.
Second by Christine. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
I would,
Oh, I'm so sorry. Discussion?
how can you say that that's not sustained? She did use public resources, she did use the building, regardless for how long, and she used city staff time, her own, which we're paying for. So I can't see how that one's not very clear and blatant. That definitely doesn't make sense to me. How could you possibly say, once again, that she's not using public resources? The public owns this building. They also own the time that she's involved in. I mean, I just can't understand that one of all these.
Is that it, Jerry? Okay. Darcy,
Call the vote?
call the vote. All those in favor? Darcy, Tony, Rebecca, Christine, opposed, Jerry. Number 9. Section 103078, representation of private interests. In keeping with their role as stewards of the public interest, city officials and employees shall not appear on behalf of private interests of third parties before the council or any board, commission, or proceeding of the city. Mr. Russ.
Jill violated this section by appearing in her private interest of the mayor's reelection by discussing the mayor's campaign while on duty at City Hall.
Is there any comment? Or,
I'll make a comment. She was not appearing before any of the listed before council, as a whole, before any board, a commission, a committee, or proceeding of the city.
so, a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
I make a motion that we find as it comes to violation of section 1.03.078, representation of private interests as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Shelton.
Second by Christine. Any further discussion? In favor of the 4 and, Darcy, Tony, Rebecca, Christine, in favor, and opposed, Jerry. Number 10, section 103080, policy, role of city officials and employees. City officials and employees shall respect and adhere to the Bandera city governmental structure as outlined in state law, the city's policies and procedures. In this structure, the city council determines the policies of the city with the advice, information, and analysis provided by the public boards, commissions, and committees, and city staff. Except as provided by the city ordinance, city officials therefore shall not interfere with the administrative functions of the city or the professional duties of the city staff, nor shall they impair the ability of staff to implement council policy decisions. Councilmember Russ.
Yeah, I'm getting where I can predict where the vote's gonna go on some of these, so I'll save us some time. I'll rescind that one also.
Councilmember Russ rescinds. Item 10, number 11, implementation. As an expression of the standards of conduct for city officials and employees expected by the city, the Bandera Code of Ethics and Conduct is intended to be self-enforcing. It therefore becomes most effective when city officials and employees are thoroughly familiar with it and embrace its provisions. I'm just gonna read, now that I see just A and C, I'll skip B, and I will mark off B as it doesn't apply to the complaint. C, city officials and employees entering office, including those appointed to boards, commissions, and committees, shall sign a statement affirming they have read and understood the City of Bandera Code of Ethics and Conduct. In addition, the Code of Ethics and Conduct shall be reviewed periodically by the City Council, boards, commissions, and committees, and the City Council shall consider recommendations from boards, commissions, committees, employees, and citizens for revision as it becomes necessary. Councilmember Russ.
I'll rescind that one also.
Number 11 is rescinded. Number 12. Section 10384, compliance and enforcement. A, the Bandera Code of Ethics and Conduct expresses standards of ethical conduct expected for city officials and employees of the Bandera City Council, boards, commissions, and committees. B, city officials and employees themselves have the primary responsibility to assure that ethical standards are understood and met, and that the public can continue to have full confidence in the integrity of government. C, the chairs of boards, commissions, and committees and the mayor have the additional responsibility to intervene when city officials' actions appear to be in violation of the Code of Ethics and Conduct and are brought to their attention. D, the city council may impose sanctions such as reprimand, formal censure, or loss of committee assignments on city officials whose conduct does not comply with the city's ethical standards. The city council may also act to remove members of boards, commissions, and committees from the office. Councilmember Russ.
I'll rescind that complaint.
Number 13, Section 103039, Agenda Officer. A, the city secretary shall be the agenda officer with responsibility for proper and legal posting of the agenda. B, the city secretary will assume responsibility for issuing to newspaper, radio, and television stations a copy of the agenda, advising them of any scheduled meeting. C, the city secretary shall distribute the agenda packets for all regularly scheduled meetings to the members of the governing body no later than 12 p.m. the Friday prior to the meeting date. Councilmember Russ.
I'll focus mainly on C. I believe Jill's in violation of this section. Packets are rarely received by noon the Friday prior to the council meeting date. And that's been for the whole year I've been here, and I've had multiple complaints about that. And the mayor could probably verify that. It's been terrible.
Okay, Jill, do you have a comment?
I do. Since he addressed the whole, section, I'm going to address that. So as far as his complaint against me, there is no record ever, being done, so, we do not have a TV or radio station. I have been here for 4 years. I've looked back as far as I can find. There's no evidence that an agenda has ever been posted in the newspaper, so those are debunked, even though he wrote them down. And the last thing is, I send stuff out as I get it. If I don't have things to send out with the packet, I don't send them. Just like this meeting tonight, y'all got some stuff Wednesday, some stuff Thursday, you didn't get some stuff till Monday. If I have a completed packet, you're gonna get it. If I don't have a completed packet, you're not. There's no reason for me to hold on to anything and not give it to you. So, although it may not always be the Friday before, I try to make it the Wednesday before. So, I just don't find that sustainable. And that's really all I have to say about that.
I'm gonna comment. I'd like to say that in terms of A, I feel Jill does an excellent job of posting our agendas within the 72-hour required notice. In terms of B, I don't know why we have this here, and I think it's appropriate that we address this and remove it from the ordinance, because this is not common practice, this is not what we do.
That's state.
Excuse me, you don't have the floor. And C, in terms of the distribution of the packet, I agree that this is what it states. It says noon, the Friday prior to the meeting date. But I will refer back to another ordinance that is not listed here, 103092. The city administrator is responsible for coordinating the agenda items and the supporting documentation. So the city secretary cannot get a packet out that she is not in possession of, period. I find that Jill is not in violation of this specific item. Yes, Tony?
I just would like to reiterate, yeah, A and B, I think, are kind of an odd, I'm not sure why they're there, but, and we should probably think about it, but, C is the one that I'm focusing on, and, you know, it's definitely a goal to have that at 12 p.m. Friday before, but I don't know, did this change every time the meetings changed? Cause sometimes it was the meetings were on Monday, then they were changed to Wednesday, did this get changed with that every time? It's just a rhetorical question.
No, when it went to Thursday, it stayed the Friday before.
Okay, and so, I do appreciate Jill, she does send it out as she gets it, so if we have the opportunity to read it, then we can, or if we wanna wait for the full packet, we can do that as well. She is not always accountable, but, not always responsible for things that she's being held accountable for. And if we can't at least take that into consideration of what is going on in this office with the staff that we have, and the interruptions on a day-to-day basis that we have, and the disrespect for her schedule and the things that she has to do, which we did hear in that recording. It was very apparent that that her schedule is not respected, and her timelines that she's trying to meet were not respected, and the whole gist of it, of many people talking tonight, that supported that. And so if we do want that, then we need to say, okay, what's our packet gonna include? Not, if she doesn't have it, she doesn't have it, she can't send it. So, thank you.
Jerry?
But our policy states that if we don't have that stuff in, that it would not go on the agenda. But it continues to go on the agenda without us having enough information. I mean, just as example, we've had times that we've not received info, our packet, as we call it, until the day of the meeting. And, yeah, it's not her fault or responsibility to get that stuff in, but she does have control over what's gonna appear on the agenda, just by her policy in itself.
Mayor Shawman?
The only comment I want to make to that is that we send you a draft agenda, hopefully on Friday, we try to get it on Friday. But the really important things that are already on that agenda, like updates from engineers or different presenters that don't maybe get us everything in time to get it in the packet, I don't want to pull them off of the agenda because we didn't get a report from the engineer before the engineer comes to get his report, and that's why those things stay on the agenda.
I have a comment after you, Tony.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I didn't realize that she was the one in charge of pulling it from the agenda if she didn't have all the supporting documentation. Because I think we've had plenty of conversations without supporting documentation that was helpful, even though because we got a presentation and we were able to ask questions, so, I wouldn't have thought that would have been on her task to do, to make that decision, but I thought it was the mayor's, so.
Go ahead.
I think we should definitely put that as an agenda item to, handle on something, because that's important. But I'd like to make a motion if I may.
Can I just make one comment before your motion? Just that you're at the discretion to move to table an item if you don't feel prepared or you've had enough time to review documentation, should that ever come up. So I personally don't see this as a relevant complaint against our city secretary. I think it's picking.
Sure.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we find as it comes to section 1.03.039 agenda officer, as unsustained with regard to City Secretary Jill Shelton.
Second.
Second by Christine. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Darcy, Tony, Rebecca, Christine, and opposed, Councilmember Russ.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, sir.
So the only factual basis of any complaint that hasn't been discussed at all, because all the other ones under the employee handbook violations that you have copies of, you've disposed of everything except the very first one is the only one that has not been factually discussed yet.
Okay, so I'm going over to this packet. So this is Employee Handbook, Chapter 38, Conflict of Interest, B4.
That's correct.
Disclosure of inside information which causes a conflict of interest. To disclose or use information relating to the city's business for the personal profit or advantage of the individual or their immediate family. Disclosure of inside information by the employee directly or indirectly is strictly prohibited. Councilmember Russ.
Yeah, I believe Jill Shelton violated this section of the employee handbook by texting I redacted the name, Councilmember Rebecca.
Oh, we see it.
I was up at City Hall again and requesting information on the budget. Disclosing information of what other council members are doing while they're at City Hall is a conflict of interest, and she disclosed information relating to city business. I think it's very inappropriate that a council member, the business, whatever business they're doing, that they're relaying that information to other council members. How is that right?
Well, I don't know how it's a conflict of interest. Jill?
Is it my turn?
Yes, ma'am.
I would just like to say on this one, regarding the text sent to council member, the text was provided to Mr. Russ in an open records request on October 19th, when he asked for any and all correspondence that referenced him to include all emails and text for me, the mayor, the attorney, Dan Santee, Keely, Allison, Laura J., and Rebecca. Think about how much time and how many taxpayer dollars went into collecting all of that information from all of those people, then having to send it to the AG's office, redact all the private information, all for one text, trying to use that against me. Seems like a waste of time to me. Not only that, but I think it fits within my job description as city secretary and HR director that I'm allowed to discuss city business with the mayor pro tem or any council member for that matter. So again, I feel like this is just something else he's, on this witch hunt to find something against me. And that was in an open records request for a text message.
Yeah, and I'm gonna comment too, since this is referencing a text message that I received. I seriously challenge your allegation of personal profit or advantage or conflict of interest in as the meaning of this rule.
Okay.
I think it's ludicrous of you. Yes, sir.
But you feel it's okay that we've got somebody monitoring us within City Hall and relaying what we're doing while we're up here to other council members such as you?
Darcy?
Why, whose business is
excuse me, I
it?
thought you were finished.
It's nobody else's business, what any of us are doing up here, what we're looking at, to relay that info to another, what? Why would you make a face like that?
No, I was about to speak. I changed my mind, and I'm waiting for you to finish up.
Why was that? No, you were making a face. Why do you feel that it's appropriate that, what, you can monitor what I'm doing up here? You think that's your business? You think that's your right?
Are you finished with the floor?
No, I'm asking.
Okay. Are you finished with the floor?
Sure, go
Okay.
ahead.
Darcy?
So I really wanna leave now. I think we've wasted enough of at least my time. So on this, as far as conflict of interest, It says for the personal profit, don't see how that text message personally profited either one of these ladies. Advantage of the individual, don't see how that was an advantage to either one of them or their immediate families. Understand why it makes you mad, Mr. Russ, cause I wouldn't love somebody texting that I was up here necessarily or anything else playing Big Brother, but that's not a violation and it's a waste of our time with this, and so I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
I make a motion that we find as it comes to a violation of the employee handbook, chapter 38, conflict of interest, as unsustained with regard to city secretary Jill Shelton.
okay, I'm gonna pause real quick
I'm
and
sorry.
let the city
If I
attorney.
could get you in your motion though, to just address all of the employee handbook violations, because you've already dealt with the rest of the allegations as
Absolutely.
part of the code of ethics.
Alright, so I'd like to amend my motion.
Please.
That we find as it comes to violations as everything in the employee handbook, when it comes to city secretary Jill Sheldon as unsustained.
I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Darcy, Tony, Rebecca, Christine, opposed, Jerry. Okay. Item 8, action following closed session. Following the closed session or public hearing, if held in open session, the city council shall make findings upon each alleged violation and may impose sanctions such as reprimand, formal censure, or loss of committee assignments on city officials whose conduct does not comply with the city's ethical standards. The city council also may act to remove members of boards, commissions, and committees from office or for appointees as allowed by the city's personnel policy.
You've already done.
Okay.
Yeah, since it was all in the open, y'all
Okay.
dealt with this already, all of those
Do we
things.
need to do part 2 of this though?
No. And Mayor Shulman, will you take your gavel back?
My question to you, Rebecca, is part 2, 3, and 4, did you make a determination on?
Well-
That's what I was asking.
Yeah, the reason that there was nothing stated there is because everything was either unsustained or removed.
There was nothing to
I thought we had one sustained delegation, I'm not trying to
No,
cause a
no,
problem.
no, we didn't.
Okay.
Ma'am, we didn't.
We did not.
Okay, cool.
I tried
The
real hard.
motion was to sustain and then it was voted down.
Right.
That's right, thank you.
Can I
Okay,
make just a general statement overall, or is that allowed? Like a conclusion?
okay.
Yes.
You know, as we've all stated, we all act out of frustration. I found some merit in some of this and a lot of it disturbing, but overall I found it petty. And I think about taxpayer money and how much is spent every day just to try to catch somebody. And I'm not just talking about the complainant tonight, I'm talking about we have a history of it. And it's clear that this process has been difficult on all of us. And it's even more clear in this room, because it has been difficult on all of us, who's actually going to choose to use this as a chance to grow and to be better, and to be better officials for the city, be better employees for the city. And those of us, it's quite clear in this room who has some insight and has the ability to do that. And I hope that we can continue to improve, and I hope that we can continue to do great things. And I hope that we can focus on how to make each of us better instead of pointing out all of our faults just to catch somebody in something and make their life miserable. Instead, let's try to be more constructive with what's happening and grow together and be better. I don't think there's anybody in their position, not one person in this entire city, that does not bring a really great thing to this city. They all have very positive things to bring, and if we constantly focus on the negative, then I think we will all be less people, and I think we should be ashamed of ourselves. And I appreciate you giving me the floor for that. I know that was a little preachy, but some of this stuff, it was hard to say yes or no to, because I know that this is a small representation of a bigger picture that's going on that we've all seen, and unless we all own it, it's not gonna get better. So,
Thank you, Tony.
again, thank you.
Okay. Item 10.
Nine.
8, what are we on?
9.
Item 9, okay.
10 and 8.
Item 9, closed session. Here we go again. The city council will convene in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551074 personnel, ma'am.
Oh, one.
Okay,
Will you
to
finish?
discuss the salaries of an officer, employee, to wit, exempt employee, city secretary, HR director Jill Shelton, city treasurer Amber Kinsey, public works director Martin Park, and the administrator Rebecca.
I would please like to make a motion to table the following 2 agenda items to our next
The closed session of the,
meeting, that whenever it's best to get it back on the agenda.
thank you.
Second.
Darcy seconds. Discussion? All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Okay, we'll table that one till January 21.
The next 2.
And number 10.
Yeah, 10, I asked for
Yeah,
9
well,
and
10
10.
just automatically follows 9, so,
Okay,
I mean, of course it does, but I mean, as far as the procedure. Okay, item 11, requests and announcements. A, request by council to place items on the future agenda. Rebecca.
Okay, so 2 things that came up tonight. Number 1 was the ordinance related to, sorry, I'm tired.
The ethics.
Yeah,
No,
the
for posting of
Yeah,
it.
for
The agenda.
posting of the agenda and the agenda packets and that whole piece. And I'm sorry, I'll email you more specific
I've got
and
notes
accurate
about it.
language. And the second piece was more related to, also because of the entirety of the recorded conversation, in the spirit of helping everyone have the accurate and correct information, that we're all very clear on the proper process to place items on the agenda. Because that was the cause of a great big fight that led to a bunch of stuff. And I think it's fair for everyone to express this openly, talk about it, make sure it works for everyone, and adjust it if need be.
Is that it?
That's it for me.
Okay, I just have one quick thing to say. We're gonna be sending out the first quarter financials for our first quarter of our fiscal year, well ahead of the 21st meeting, so please get a look at them, ask the treasurer whatever questions you may have, but they'll be coming out, but that will be on the 21st agenda. We're reviewing the financials quarterly and getting our department reports quarterly, so we'll get our first one for this year in January. Jill?
And then we were gonna add the city administrator position. I've gotten several applications that I'll be sending out to y'all. So that needs to be on the next agenda for y'all to review in probably
Several?
closed session.
Yeah.
Several, like, 14.
Oh,
Wow,
did you get mine?
awesome.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
And don't forget the workshop on the,
January 20th.
January 28th City Council workshop.
Okay. Item B, announcements by council. We're gonna have a
I couldn't
workshop.
think of anything.
I'm so brain dead, I don't even know.
Anybody wanna announce they wanna adjourn?
Are we on that number? I'll move to adjourn. I don't mind.
Rebecca makes a motion to adjourn.
Darcy said.
Darcy second.
I third it.
Discussion, all in favor?
Do hands up.
Okay. In
Yes,
favor?
yes, yes.
10:20.